Chapter 416. The Yin-Yang Masters were not even as powerful as Wuxia's Dharma Spell Masters. Although they were not physically strong, Wuxia's Dharma Spell Masters were able to protect themselves at the induction, entry level, and ethereal enlightenment levels. The Dharma spells of the Talisman Sect, the Five Elements Sect, the Spell Sect, and the Heavenly Master Sect of Dragon Tiger Mountain were especially powerful. Regardless of the sect, once a cultivator reached the Tao body level, they would have an immortal body and would be as powerful as an immortal state martial arts master. On the other hand, the Yin-Yang Masters relied on their Shikigami to attack and kill. They had very few means of self-defense. Looking at it this way, they were more like witchcraft or gu experts who could drive gods and spirits away. Similarly, they relied on external objects. After leaving the shrine and their spirit-branded retainers, they were no different from ordinary people who didn't even have the strength to truss a chicken. Therefore, the moment the battle broke out, Anpei Jipping fled in a panic under the protection of many Japanese masters, gang members and police officers. His wooden clogs were long gone, and his high hat had fallen off. His hair was disheveled, and he looked like a beggar who had been chased away by the street. It was a pitiful sight. At the same time, hundreds of Japanese police officers rushed in from both sides. They were holding assault rifles and riot shields. They half-knelt on the ground and aimed their assault rifles and sniper rifles at Jiang Tian and the others. The leader of the police officers even held a megaphone and shouted in broken Chinese, "You have been surrounded. Please put down your weapons and surrender. Put down your weapons and surrender. Otherwise, we will kill you immediately." Damn, there are too many guns. I don't think I can handle them all. Du Guxiao frowned. Seeing that Anpei Jipping had been stuffed into an explosion-proof car and was about to escape, Jiang Tian also lost his patience. He suddenly waved his right hand, and with a boom, a container weighing more than a few tons suddenly flew out from the side. In the whistling sound of the wind, it crossed a distance of hundreds of meters and slammed down toward the police officers. Oh my God! Many police officers were dumbfounded and horrified. They only had time to let out a cry of surprise before they were completely covered by the container and smashed into meat paste. None of them were able to escape. Streams of blood flowed out from the bottom of the container, like a stream of spring water, scarlet and glaring. Seeing this, Ishi Yulian was stunned. This is too amazing. I'm afraid it weighs 10 tons. Master is like a god. Wow, Brother Chu, you're so overbearing. Guduxiao was so excited that he was jumping up and down. Relying on your Dao Qi to control a 10-ton chest, this little brother's admiration for you is like the endless torrential river, like the overflowing yellow river that cannot be stopped. He had seen Hoshi's The Deer and the Cauldron on the ship and copied Dolong's lines. In fact, he had overestimated Jiang Tian's power. With Jiang Tian's current cultivation, if he didn't use any secret techniques, he wouldn't be able to move anything that weighed 10,000 pounds with just his Zhen Yuan or pure physical strength. However, once he used the 1,000 gold swordsman's secret technique, it was completely different. He could control all metals with ease, as if he was using his own arm. That's enough, stop talking nonsense. I want to kill Anpei Jipping. Do as you see fit. Jiang Tian stepped on his flying sword and chased after Anpei Jipping, who was already in a car. Damn, Brother Novice has a flying sword. Du Guxiao chased after Jiang Tian while shouting, "Brother Novice, you are amazing. According to Master, no one in the hidden sect has successfully made a flying sword for 200 years. Anpei Jipping was sitting in a speeding explosion-proof car. He was escaping from the Yamaguchi shrine. There were more than 10 police cars and Yamaguchi Gumi vehicles guarding him. There is a flying person in the sky. It's that Wuxia demon. My God, he can fly." Suddenly, someone noticed Jiang Tian, who was chasing after them in the air, and he immediately cried out in panic. Tens of meters in the air, Jiang Tian flew as fast as lightning. His speed was incomparably fast. How was he human? He was like a Superman. Fire! Fire the rocket launchers! The sunroofs of the 3 cars were opened. Several Japanese people set up 3 shoulder-mounted RPGs and fired at Jiang Tian. The others also smashed the car window with their guns and aimed at Jiang Tian. They pulled the trigger all the way to the end and fired bullets at Jiang Tian, as if they were free. Did you bring a rocket launcher? Anpei Jipping wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and looked at Jiang Tian through the glass window. Yes, although the police didn't have one, we Yamaguchi Gumi did. I didn't expect to use it, Hashimoto Takashi said. That's good. Even a Divine Realm expert can't withstand continuous fire from a rocket launcher. Kill him, Anpei Jipping said fiercely. In addition, the police helicopter is also dispatched. We need to use heavy weapons to deal with this demon. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. 3 rockets were shot at Jiang Tian with wisps of white smoke and a sharp whistling sound. These rockets belong to the RPG-7 generation. They were individual anti-tank weapons, and were often called recoilless guns. The grenade cover had a diameter of 93 millimeters and could penetrate 600 millimeters of armor plate. When the grenade head hit the target, under the pressure of the inner wall, the grenade's electronic program fuse generated enough voltage to ignite the detonator at the back of the projectile, igniting the explosive charge and producing a powerful hot air flow. The hot air flow broke through the armor plate and entered the car with a powerful force and violently expanded, causing a second explosion. The copper grenade cover was shattered into finger-sized and teardrop-sized molten liquid in the explosion. It was like a solid warhead that had a great destructive effect. Even a tank would be blown to pieces. The initial flight speed was also very terrifying. The initial flight speed was 176.8 meters per second. After flying for 10 m, the propellant engine ignited and the speed increased to 294 meters per second. Humph! You think you can kill me? Jiang Tian stepped on his flying sword and sneered. The black iron flying shuttle brought up a dazzling black light as it broke through the air. How terrifying was Jiang Tian's strength! Moreover, the black iron shuttle also had an acceleration array. Its speed was enough to break through the speed of sound. The black iron shuttle brought out a shrill sonic boom that resounded through the world. It was like a cruise missile that drew out a white turbulence in the air. It was like a rainbow that pierced through the sun. In the blink of an eye, it accurately shot a rocket. With a thunderous explosion, the copper explosive cover crumbled like paper. The lightning and the explosive exploded together, and a huge red flower with a radius of 10 meters bloomed in the air. The boiling hot liquid flew in the air, and the buildings on both sides of the road trembled violently. The glass windows were shattered, and a few pieces of the walls collapsed. The remaining 2 rockets were also shot at Jiang Tian, only a few hundred meters away from Jiang Tian. Break! Break! Jiang Tian stepped on the little black flying sword and raised his eyebrows. He shouted and activated his divine sense. The black iron shuttle that was floating in the air shot out 2 more times. Boom! Boom! 2 beautiful fireballs exploded in the air. One of them was close to the ground. Instantly, a few cars that were parked on the road were lifted into the air and fell heavily on the ground, turning into a few twisted iron lumps. How is this possible? Oh my God, is he still human? What weapon is he using? It's so powerful and so accurate. It can actually intercept the rocket. Many Japanese were dumbfounded. They were like clay sculptures and even forgot to shoot or load the rockets. Damn, Brother Novice is really awesome. What kind of magic weapon is that? It can even intercept the rockets. Dugu Xiao was completely convinced. He originally thought that Jiang Tian was an expert from the secular world. No matter how strong he was, he would only be on par with him. After all, he was an expert from Langyi Academy who had countless cultivation resources. The cultivation resources of the secular world could not be compared to the Yin sect. But now, he realized that Jiang Tian's strength was definitely far beyond his own. He might even be on par with his master. Run! Run! Ampere Jipping was shocked and regretful. He should not have left Nomiya Shrine. Now he was being chased around. Before this, many Japanese thought that they could kill Jiang Tian with their rockets. So they slowed down a little. Of course, they also thought that the lower the speed, the higher the accuracy of their shots. But now, they were like rabbits being chased by a pack of wolves. They sped up to the limit and ran for their lives. Whoosh! Under the control of Jiang Tian's divine sense, the black iron shuttle drew a beautiful arc in the air. With a clang, It easily pierced through the special steel plate on the explosion-proof car roof. The bulletproof glass, which was harder than steel, shattered like paper. Whoosh! After the black iron shuttle smashed the driver's body from top to bottom, it did not slow down. It pierced through the chassis of the explosion-proof car and stabbed into the asphalt road. Like an iron nail, it firmly nailed the explosion-proof car to the road. The tail of the shuttle was sticking out of the car roof and was still trembling. Ampere Jipping was so scared that his face turned pale. He hurriedly opened the car door. Under the protection of several Japanese experts, he hurriedly ran into an alley, trying to escape Jiang Tian's pursuit. "All right, stop running." Suddenly, with an incomparably majestic shout, a figure blocked their way. It was Jiang Tian. "Kong Teichu, if I was in the shrine, with the help of my Shikigami, you would never be my opponent." Ampere Jipping roared unwillingly. "Unfortunately, I won't give you that chance." Jiang Tian smiled indifferently and stretched out his hand. A tremendous attractive force pulled Impeiji over. Jiang Tian grabbed Impeiji's neck with one hand and pulled out a green bamboo flute from Impeiji's waist with the other hand. This was the Dharma artifact he used to control his Shikigami, the soul-guiding flute. "You can go to hell now." The next moment, Jiang Tian twisted his hand. With a crisp crack, blood spurted out as Ampere Jipping's neck was crushed into pieces. Ampere Jipping's head tilted to one side as he fell to the ground, dead. One of the 4 Japanese on Myojis, the Grand Priest of Nomiya Shrine, Ampere Jipping, was dead. "Master Kong, please spare our lives." Seeing this scene, the other Japanese experts were so scared that they prostrated themselves on the ground and begged for mercy. Jiang Tian dared to kill Ampere Jipping. This was too domineering. How could they not be afraid? At this time, Ishii Yulian and Dugu Xiao had caught up. Jiang Tian asked calmly, "Who has the highest status?" "The mayor of Fukuoka and the vice president of Mitsui Corporation, Mitsui Sho." Ishii Yulian pulled the 2 out. "I shall kill the rest." Jiang Tian said coldly, "It's great to work for a novice." Dugu Xiao laughed strangely and didn't give the others any time to react. His katana swept across the ground like mercury. In an instant, blood spurted out and screams were heard. A dozen people fell to the ground dead. Not a single one was left alive. "Let's go." Jiang Tian didn't bother to look at the corpses. He left after saying that. Chapter 417. That night, Jiang Tian and Dugu Xiao stayed in Ishii Imperial Lotus's mansion called Shimizu at the foot of Mount Fuji. "Wow, this chandelier is so shiny it's blinding my eyes." Dugu Xiao was stunned by the luxurious decoration as soon as he entered the house. The pure oak floor was spotless and shiny. The Persian cashmere carpet made one feel as if they were stepping on clouds. The LCD plasma TV took up more than half of the background wall. The leather sofa was handmade by an Italian craftsman. Priceless antique paintings hung on the wall, and there was a charming sandalwood scent in the air. TSK, this bathtub can be used as a swimming pool. This bed is heart-shaped. It's so romantic. Haha, is this a massage chair? Interesting, it can move on its own. Sister Lien is really good at enjoying life. Dugu Xiao was like a country bumpkin, jumping around excitedly, touching here and there, looking at all the rooms. He would definitely try out anything new that he came across. This sofa is so bouncy. Finally, he sat down on the leather sofa, stretched his waist, and was overjoyed. "Bro, why are you so calm?" Dugu Xiao looked at the expressionless Jiang Tian and asked, "Your family is very rich, right?" "Anyway, I have a lot of these kinds of villas." Jiang Tian smiled faintly, too lazy to explain. "If I go down the mountain early, I would have bought a few already." Dugu Xiao rolled his eyes, picked up the remote control, turned on the TV, found a Chinese channel, and watched it with great interest. "Mr. Jiang, what should we do next?" Ishii Imperial Lotus asked solemnly while making tea for the 2. "With this soul-guiding flute, we should be able to summon the 3 Shikigami of Nomiya Shrine, right?" Jiang Tian stroked the green flute and smiled faintly. "Of course, but you must be a grand priest. If you don't worship them, they won't listen to your orders. They might even fight with you." Ishii Imperial Lotus's face turned pale, and his hands trembled. He looked at Jiang Tian in disbelief. Master Kong, what are you trying to do? Since we already have the soul-guiding flute, they won't be able to control the Shikigami. In that case, we should avoid them and go directly to Momoi Aitaro or Miyamoto Geniki, instead of the Shikigami. Jiang Tian said indifferently. My physical body is already very strong now, but my spiritual power is relatively lagging behind. I want to absorb and refine those 3 Shikigami to strengthen my spiritual power. At that time, my spiritual power will condense into a blade that can cut through steel and annihilate divine souls. That will be the true power of my words. The true power of my words. On the path of cultivation, one's physical body, cultivation methods, spirit, and magical artifacts were indispensable. It was best to advance in these aspects simultaneously. Otherwise, the one that lagged behind would form shackles and restrictions on the overall combat strength. Now that Jiang Tian had cultivated the gung metal divine body, his physical body was incomparably strong, but his consciousness was relatively weak. In the eyes of others, the 3 Shikigami of Nomiya Shrine had gathered the power of faith of millions of believers for decades. Their mental strength was extremely powerful and terrifying. But in the eyes of Jiang Tian, these 3 Shikigami were rare resources for cultivation. They were incomparably delicious to strengthen one's consciousness. What? Absorb and refine the Shikigami? How is this possible? Ishii Imperial Lotus was tongue-tied. He couldn't believe it. It was as if he was listening to a heavenly book. I have more than 10 million cultivation methods to cultivate my mental strength. I have my own way. Let's rest for a night and go to Nomiya Shrine tomorrow. Jiang Tian sipped his tea and stood up. He glanced at Du Guxiao and said, Du Guxiao, aren't you going to rest? No, I want to watch TV. Go to sleep. Haha, this is so interesting. Du Guxiao stared at the TV and waved his hand. He was amused by the retarded variety show and laughed like an idiot. Before he went down the mountain, the most advanced modern appliance he had seen in the past 18 years was the flashlight. Now that he saw such a big TV, it was colorful, bright, and high definition. How could he still walk? He planned to stay up all night and focus on watching TV. He had to satisfy his craving. Too lazy to pay attention to the horrified Ishii Imperial Lotus, Jiang Tian went back to his room and sat down on the leather sofa. His eyes shot out beams of light. He stroked the soul-guiding flute and sighed. This is not an ordinary awakening Dharma artifact. It is made of soul-guiding bamboo. It can swallow, refine and control all mental strength. Soul-guiding bamboo, also known as Empyrean bamboo, was a rare material even in the cultivation realm. This kind of bamboo could naturally absorb mental strength. Ghost generals, ghost kings, ghost emperors, and even the divine souls of the great sage would have to avoid it. If they were not careful, they would be swallowed by this bamboo. But the Ampere family had made it into a Dharma artifact to awaken the Shikigami. It was a complete waste. Maybe these Shikigami found out that Ampere Jipping didn't know how to use soul-guiding bamboo, so they wouldn't be swallowed if they stayed away. I can't waste it. Let me draw some runes and make it into a real soul-swallowing flute. Jiang Tian thought for a while and his eyes lit up. He immediately formed a Gungjin Qi weapon and carefully drew it on the flute. Kong Teichu is not dead. High Priest Ampere Jipping was killed by Kong Teichu. Mitsui Sho and the mayor of Fukuoka were captured alive. The news spread like a hurricane across the entire Japanese cultivation realm. Many kendo experts, ninjas and onmyojis were alarmed. The news then spread to the upper echelons of the Sakura-kai, and spread to the entire East Asia. There were hundreds of people present at the battle on the pier of Fukuoka. Although Jiang Tian and Du Guxiao killed almost 200 people, there were still some witnesses who managed to escape. Moreover, Jiang Tian chased after Ampere Jipping in the downtown area. There were many surveillance cameras and witnesses, and they had taken videos. This news could not be hidden at all. Kong Teichu is too powerful and cunning. He killed Hattori Hanzo, Nagaki Miyamoto, and even Ishii Yurin. He purposely lured Lord Ampere Jipping away from the Nomiya Shrine to the pier of Fukuoka. He couldn't even use 1/10 of his power. He could only be killed. Some experts analyzed the details and gritted their teeth. They hated Kong Teichu to the core. Yeah, Kong Teichu is too despicable. He pretended to be dead. Now that the Japanese government has made a statement, and Wuxia has washed their hands of responsibility, it's impossible to suppress Kang Taechu through Wuxia. Some tycoons were trembling with anger. That's right, the Prime Minister has already made a statement. If he goes back on his words, where is the dignity of the country? Our international reputation will be greatly damaged. Some politicians were so depressed that they vomited blood. So now it can only be a matter between Japan and Kang Taechu. Wuxia has already completed their mission. Someone analyzed. Ishii Yurin should be killed. She must have revealed High Priest Ampere's weakness. That's why she was killed by Kang Taechu in one blow. If Kang Taechu was lured into the Nomiya shrine, how could he be a match for those powerful Shikigami? Some people cursed indignantly. They wanted to chop Kang Taechu and Ishii Yurin into pieces and feed them to the dogs. What do we do now? Nomiya shrine has been completely annihilated. Who else can suppress Kang Taechu? As soon as this voice came out, many people who were paying attention to the situation were surprised. Although Jiang Taichu was very cunning and sinister, there were too many experts who had died in Jiang Taichu's hands. His strength could be seen at a glance. Inside the Tanjun dojo, Grand Yin-Yang Master Ampere Clear Sky was one of the top 10 Grand Yin-Yang Masters in Japan with the power of the new Shinigami Ingo. Miyamoto Takeo was a Nitin first-rate Kendo Master, and was one of the top 10 Kendo Masters in Japan. Yagyu Masahiro was a high-level ninja of the Heiga Ryu. He could control the Earth Element Ninja and turn it into an attack. However, all three of them were easily killed by Kang Taechu. Ingo was even stomped into a pulp by Kang Taechu. On the Great East Asia, Naguru Miyamoto was the master of the Nitin first-rate Kendo Master, and one of the top 5 Kendo Masters in Japan. Hattori Hanzo was the master of the Heiga Ninja sect, and an immortal-level ninja. He could use the wind as a blade and his shield of ninja could withstand heavy machine gun fire. Ishii Yurin was the current leader of the Yamaguchi Gumi. He was proficient in ninjutsu, kendo, and inyan jutsu. He was also half a step away from the immortal level. However, he was no match for Kang Taechu. Moreover, there were even more shocking details. Jiang Taichu had already consumed the heart-scorching tea of 5 poisons, and was bound by the dragon-snaring lasso on the Great East Asia. But he still managed to break free easily. One had to know that the dragon-snaring lasso was a Dharma artifact left behind by Jiang Zia, Abe Saimai of Japan. On the mangrove pier in Fukuoka, Anpei Jipping was killed again. It could be said that the entire Kyushu Island's cultivation community had suffered heavy losses. More than half of their experts had been lost, and the island had become unstoppable. This was a huge loss that the Dongyang people could not accept. Meanwhile, in a quiet room in the Nomiya shrine, many senior government officials, tycoons, and powerful cultivators had gathered. They had gathered here to celebrate the death of Kang Taechu. Red lanterns were hung high in the air, food and drinks were served, and even a traditional dance performance was prepared. Everyone was waiting for the good news. However, at this moment, they felt like they had been slapped in the face countless times. Their faces were filled with humiliation and anger. There were even more people who were uneasy and terrified. A kendo master couldn't stand the oppressive atmosphere and shouted, "Where is Kang Taechu now? Did he run away?" He didn't run away. A police officer sent by the Metropolitan Police Department said with a serious face. According to our surveillance system, he is now living in Ishii Yurin's secret villa at the foot of Mount Fuji. Then what are we waiting for? All of us Kyushu Island's experts will go together and chop him into pieces. The kendo master said angrily. Also, we can send the police and the army to kill him with cannons. I don't believe that he can withstand it. He disregarded the power of Japan and killed our powerful cultivators. We can't let him do whatever he wants. No. He has captured the mayor of Fukuoka and an important member of the Mitsui family. The police officer from the Metropolitan Police Department said. Chapter 418. By then, the Grand Divine Priest Anpei Yashihei was already dead. His younger brother, the Deputy Divine Priest Anpei Masaru, was now in charge of the situation. Weapons of mass destruction are useless. We can only rely on the cultivation world. Feeling great psychological pressure, he said with a solemn face, "but he has already killed my elder brother and taken away the soul-guiding flute. Even the 3 Shikigami can't use it. Now, I'm afraid that we are no match for Jiang Taichu." "What? The soul-guiding flute has been taken away? What does he want to do with it? Does he want to control the Shikigami?" someone exclaimed. "That's impossible." Onpei Masaru was in his 60s. He was one of the top 10 onmyojis in Japan, and his onmyojis had reached the peak. Hearing the question, he shook his head and said, "The soul-guiding flute can only awaken the Shikigami, but it can only be used by the Onpei family to control and activate the Shikigami. He took away the soul-guiding flute, so that we can't awaken and activate the Shikigami. His idea is despicable and shameless, but he succeeded. Without the soul-guiding flute, we can't activate the Shikigami. What should we do?" Many overlords, officials, and tycoons in Kyushu frowned and were at a loss of what to do. The leaders of the Sakura Society have already learned about this. We are on our way to help. While everyone was at a loss of what to do, a faint voice came from afar. A man in a white kendo outfit walked in slowly. This man looked to be in his 40s. His eyebrows were sharp, his skin was fair, his nose was straight, his lips were red, and his teeth were white. His long hair reached his shoulders, and he wore wooden clogs on his bare feet. But it just so happened that his figure was tall and straight like a sword, exuding a heroic aura, and he gave others a feeling of elegance and restrained edge. As soon as the man in the white kendo outfit appeared, Onpei Masaru stood up and said respectfully, "Mr. Momoi Rutaru, what brings you here?" This man was the current leader of the Japanese kendo school, the leader of the Japanese kendo grandmaster, the former number 4 on the dark roll, and the current president of the Sakura Society, Momoi Rutaru. In fact, he was already 70 years old, but his sword Dao was so heaven-defying that he actually showed signs of rejuvenation. At the same time, he was also one of the 3 sages of East Asia who had been conferred the title of Sword Sage by the Emperor. In terms of swordsmanship, his strength was second only to the old Sword God Palace's origin. Mirror Heartwise School was a kendo school on par with Nitten Ryu and Beichen One Blade School. In the world of Japanese kendo, there were sayings such as Thousand Leaves of Technique, Palace of Strength, and Peach Well of Position. In other words, the Chiba family of the North Star One Blade School relied on techniques, the Nitten Ichiryu relied on surging strength, and the Mirror Heartwise School relied on sword momentum. The posture was very beautiful, and it had already become an art of killing. But actually, in terms of practicality, the Mirror Heartwise School was actually far ahead of the other 2 schools. It was just that the posture was too beautiful, forming a unique characteristic. 20 years ago, Rutaru Momoi, who was only 20 years old, challenged many kendo schools and won every battle. He was able to suppress Nagaki Miyamoto and many other Ryu masters, and was known as the most promising person to replace Genichi Miyamoto. 10 years ago, Wang Zhongyan of the Xingzhou Chinese Association tried to reach Japan, and defeated many Japanese masters. In the end, Rutaru Momoi defeated Wang Zhongyan with 1 sword on Mount Fuji. Wang Zhongyan returned in defeat and limited his power to Southeast Asia. It was also after that battle that Rutaru Momoi was conferred the title of Sword Sage by the Emperor of Japan. His position in the world of kendo was second only to Origin of Sword God Palace. And when Rutaru Momoi entered, many figures entered one after another. Abe Masaru's expression became more and more shocked. Kumo Yunwan, Sasaki Kaisha Akiji Shin. Kumo Yunwan was the head of the Kumo family. He was also the grand priest of the Kumo Shrine, the most symbolic and important shrine in Japan. Moreover, the Kumo family and the Abe family had a deep relationship. The ancestor of the Kumo family, Kumo Tadayuki, was Abe Saimai's master. If Abe Saimai, the ancestor of the Abe family, who was known as Jiangxia of Japan, was the master of Japanese yin-yang technique and had carried it forward, then Kumo Tadayuki was the true origin of yin-yang technique. Therefore, the yin-yang technique of the Kumo family was more ancient and pure. It was a top-secret art passed down from the Edo period. Sasaki Kaisha was the descendant of Sasaki Kojiro, the great swordsman who was as famous as Miyamoto Musashi in Japanese kendo. She was also the only female kendo grand teacher in Japan. Some people compared her to first Madame Gongsun of the Tang dynasty in Wuxia. Akaji Shin was an S-level arcanist. He was born with the ability to control wood energy and activate plants to form attacks. At the same time, he was also an immortal-level ninja. Behind them were ninjas, yin-yang masters, and kendo masters from various families and sects, as well as arcanists secretly supported by the Japan Self-Defense Forces. There were more than a dozen of them. It could be said that more than half of Japan's Grand Masters and Immortal State Masters had gathered in this quiet room. These overlords were usually distributed in Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya, Hokkaido, Shikoku, and other places. Each and every one of them was an existence that could suppress an entire region. They could make the tycoons lower their heads and earn the respect of high-ranking government officials. Now all of them had come to the Nomiya Shrine to deal with Jiang Taichu alone. Are you all going to help Nomiya Shrine by defeating Kong Taichu? What do you think of the Sakura Kaisha Peak? After Abe Masaru and the other overlords sat down, they immediately bowed and asked anxiously, Kong Taichu is a real immortal state warrior. Momoi Rutaru sipped his tea and said, although the grand teacher of Japanese kendo, immortal-level ninja and grand onmyoji are said to be as powerful as immortal state warriors, they are not real immortal state warriors. A solemn look flashed across his handsome face. Even if we all attack together, we are not sure that we can defeat Kong Taichu. We can only deal 1,000 damage to the enemy and 800 damage to ourselves. Kong Taichu is so powerful? A real immortal state warrior? Is he more powerful than the grand teacher of kendo and immortal ninja? Yes, the grand teacher of kendo, immortal ninja and onmyoji are not real immortal state warriors. Hearing this, all the overlords on Kyushu, especially the members of Nomiya Shrine, were stunned. A real immortal state warrior can withstand artillery shells with his body, and his soul energy is so powerful that he can interfere with reality and speak the truth. May I ask, which one of you here can achieve that? Everyone was stunned by Momoi Rutaru's words. A deadly silence fell over the room. Then what should we do? Are we going to let him wreak havoc on Kyushu? This man is very ambitious. After taking down Nomiya Shrine, he might be able to conquer the entire Japan. The next moment, many overlords on Kyushu were anxious, especially Abe Masaru. He was so anxious that cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Yes, we can't wait for such a bloodthirsty madman. We have to take the initiative to attack. Lord Momoi, everyone, the descendants of the Yamato people are a family. You can't just stand by and watch. The dignity of the Cherry Blossom Society is not to be offended. Momoi Rutaru smiled calmly and said, Lord Momoi Rutaru, we are not here for nothing. First of all, we hope that the members of the Miyamoto family will go to Tokyo with us and ask the Sword God to help us. What? Ask the Sword God to help us? He is already 150 years old. In his seat, Miyamoto Shinsen was startled and cried out. The Sword God, was the patriarch of the Miyamoto family 2 generations ago. He was also the 3rd patriarch of Nichiren Ryu and his great-grandfather. He had been living in seclusion on a hill in the suburbs of Tokyo for many years, and had controlled the Cherry Blossom Society from afar. He was a real immortal state warrior. Of course, he could crush Kong Taichu, but if he failed, it would be a great blow to Japan. As the honorary president of the Cherry Blossom Society, he was the symbol of the spirit of Japan, second only to the emperor. As soon as Miyamoto Shinzo said this, he saw Momoi Rutaru, Aoki King, Sasaki Haisha, and other experts bowing to him. He knew that this was the common opinion of the Sakura Society's upper echelons, and he had no power to change it. Okay, I will go and meet my grandfather now. Seeing this, Miyamoto Shinzo could only nod and agree. Then Momoi Rutaru's eyes became serious. He glanced at the overlords of the Miyamoto Shrine and said, Second of all, Kumo Yunwen is controlling the 3 Shikigami of the Nozomiya Shrine. I and many other overlords will help to protect them. Lord Momoi, the soul guiding flute has been lost. Can Kumo Yunwen control the 3 Shikigami? Hearing this, Abe Zorong's face suddenly turned ashen, and he screamed, feeling very unwilling. Shikigami were the biggest reliance of the Onmyoji family. Kumo Yunwen was controlling the 3 Shikigami of the Nozomiya Shrine. Next, he would have to give up the position of Grand Priest and hand over the Nozamiya shrine to Kamo Yunwen. Then the Abe family would become a second-rate family. Don't worry, Lord Momoy. I have my own way. Kamo Yunwen smiled coldly. The Kamo family was the origin of Japanese onmyoji. Abe Saimai had also learned onmyoji from the Kamo family. However, in the eyes of the Japanese, the Abe family was even more powerful than the Kamo family. This time, Abe Shinzo's death had given him a chance to take control of the Nozamiya shrine. If Kong Taechu dared to offend the Nozamiya shrine, he would step on Kong Taechu's corpse to establish his authority and become the #1 onmyoji family in Japan. I have received a secret report. Kong Taechu's next stop is Nozamiya shrine, Momoi Rutaru said. The entire place was deathly silent. Everyone's faces were filled with fear and shock. It was a sleepless night. Many overlords and overlords of the Japanese cultivation world were heading to Kyushu to gather at the Nozamiya shrine. They were discussing and plotting secretly. Undercurrents were surging, and there were many arrangements. However, the cycle of the sun and the moon continued. A few hours passed in a blink of an eye. The sun rose from the horizon and shone down 1,000 rays of golden light. On Kyushu Island, halfway up Tori Mountain, on the mountain path leading to Nomiya Shrine, there was a wide platform with lush greenery. The scenery was pleasant. Sword-dispelling platform. Everyone had to remove their katanas and weapons on the platform before they could continue up the mountain to worship at the Nozamiya Shrine. Otherwise, they would be killed without mercy. On the sword-dispelling platform, Sword Sage Momoi Rutaru, Sasaki Aisha and Lord Akiji stood upright like unsheathed swords and looked down at the foot of the mountain. A large number of Japanese overlords stood in the forest and on the rocks to watch the battle. They wanted to see how powerful Kong Taechu was. Sword Sage, will Kong Taechu really come here? Sasaki Aisha frowned and asked seriously. Chapter 419. She looked to be in her 30s. She had a beautiful face and a cold temperament. Her beautiful eyes were clear and sharp. Her long black hair was tied into a ponytail. She was dressed in a neat white kendo robe. She looked valiant and exuded a sharp aura. She was like a peerless swordswoman who had walked out of a warrior novel. Kong Taechu is a cultivator of both Dharma spells and martial arts. Why would he want to take away the soul-guiding flute? Momoi Rutaru said lightly. Is he trying to steal the Shikigami? How is that possible? Can he control it? Sasaki Kaisha asked in surprise. He is here. Before Momoi Rutaru had time to explain, his expression suddenly changed slightly. His eyes were like lightning as he stared at the 3 figures on the mountain path like arrows. They are so fast. Akiji Shin's face changed drastically as he exclaimed. 2 of the figures shot toward them like whistling arrows. They could cross hundreds of meters in one leap. At this speed, it would only take them 3 minutes to reach them. Wuxia guessed from afar, please come here for a rest. Momoi Rutaru exhaled. His voice was like raging waves beating the shore, pushing down horizontally and echoing in the mountains for a long time. He is here. Could it be that he really took the soul-guiding flute for the sake of his Shikigami? At that moment, many Japanese overlords also noticed Jiang Tian's figure. Their expressions changed drastically as they were shocked. Hehe, are you here to kill me? Then be prepared to be killed. Wash your neck and wait for me to chop it off. A powerful voice blasted into the sky like a heavy cannon. Every note shot into the sky like a cannonball and collided with Momoi Rutaru's sound waves. The 2 sound waves met in the mountains. Instantly, it was as if an invisible explosion had occurred. The trees shook violently, the mountain rocks rolled, and the feathers of the birds in the mountains fluttered. They fell to the ground one after another. They were actually turned into meat paste by the violent sound waves. I have heard that Master Kong is a cultivator of both Dharma spells and martial arts. He is very powerful. Today, I have seen it with my own eyes. Momoi Rutaru's face showed a hint of admiration, but his eyes were serious. He knew that this was the strongest opponent he had ever faced in his life. Perhaps even he would not be able to suppress Kong Taechu. Only if everyone worked together would they have a chance of killing this person. Jiang Tian said this in Japanese. In the next moment, his body suddenly rose to a height of several hundred meters. Then he stepped on the air and crossed a distance of 200 to 300 meters with each step. He landed on the sword-dispelling platform in just 3 steps. The incantation of truth from his mouth was the law. Walking in the air, 100 meters in 1 step. Seeing this scene, the expressions of many Japanese experts changed, and they were shocked. Even in Japan, where cultivation was flourishing, the number of people who could perform this kind of movement technique and speed could be counted on 2 hands. Even if a young man in his early 20s was extremely talented, and even if he started cultivating in his mother's womb, it was still inconceivable that he could comprehend such a great divine ability at such a young age. This person must be a monster. That's right. Today, everyone will swarm forward and fight side by side. We will work together to slay the evil. It's best to keep his divine soul, and let Master Kumo refine him into a new Shikigami to serve Japan. Many Japanese people whispered to each other and gritted their teeth. They looked at Jiang Tian with hostility. Damn Chinese pig. You don't know what's good for you. The one who will die today will be you. How dare you be so rude to the sword sage? You deserve to die. Wuxia people are just a bunch of ants. Ants should have the self-awareness of ants. You have killed too many Japanese. Kneel on the ground and commit suicide to atone for your sins. If you commit suicide, we might leave your corpse intact. Otherwise, hee. Some hot-tempered Japanese experts even pointed at Jiang Tian and shouted angrily. Even though they knew that Jiang Tian was very strong, their prejudice against Wuxia would not change. In history, the cultivation world of the 2 countries had many bloody impulses. In their bones, they looked down on Wuxia people and viewed Wuxia people as an inferior race. So what if Kang Taechu was strong? He had defeated Nomiya Shrine, destroyed several Japanese patrol ships, and killed many Japanese experts. He had already committed a capital offense. Today he had even attacked Nomiya Shrine and dared to speak so arrogantly in front of the sword sage. He was extremely arrogant and did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. As the president of the Sakura Society, Momoi Rutaru's status was too high. Even if the leader of Japan wanted to meet the sword sage, Momoi Rutaru, he would have to make an appointment in advance and present an invitation card before he could meet the sword sage. A lowly Wuxia person and a Chinese monkey dared to offend the sword sage, the president of the Sakura Society. Wasn't he courting death? Noisy. Trash like you don't deserve to be killed by me. Jiang Tian raised his eyebrows and let out a low roar. He used the demonic dragon roar, and waves of air blasted out in all directions. Kaboom! With a loud sound, several large trees that required a person to wrap their arms around collapsed. Wood fibers and debris flew everywhere. More than a dozen Japanese experts spurted blood from their 7 orifices and fell to the ground, unconscious. The sound wave attack was like thousands of cannons firing at the same time. It was unstoppable and destroyed everything in its path. Other than Momoi Rutaru and a few other top experts, the others retreated one after another. They felt so disgusted that they wanted to die. Fortunately, they did not vomit blood. Seeing this, Momoi Rutaru's pupils suddenly shrank. He shouted in a low voice, Kang Taechu, do you know that you have committed a great disaster by killing the experts of Nomiya Shrine and destroying the Japanese patrol ships? Great disaster? Haha, so what if I killed a few Japanese? So what if I destroyed a few patrol ships? Jiang Tian interrupted with a calm expression. As if he was taking a leisurely stroll, he approached the crowd and said coldly, in my opinion, it's far from enough. What? Far from enough? Could it be that Kang Taechu, you really want to destroy Nomiya Shrine? Momoi Rutaru questioned with a serious expression. His aura rose steadily, and a monstrous pressure pushed out toward Jiang Tian. Wrong. I want to destroy the 4 major shrines of Japan. Destroy the Sakura Society. Jiang Tian's expression was calm as he said calmly, so what if I kill you, the Prime Minister of the East Ocean Emperor? So what if I sink a small island country like Japan? Jiang Tian was not exaggerating. Not to mention becoming a god, even after becoming a deity, he had the power to move mountains and fill seas. He could pierce a planet with a sword and shatter the sun with a punch. But Momoi Rutaru was displeased. His blood surged and his face turned red. He shouted, Kong Teichu, you are really as arrogant as the rumors say. Do you know that even the war god of Wuxia, Yi Zhantian, dares not speak like this in front of me? The sword sage of Japan. Sword sage? Bah. Jiang Tian spat a mouthful of thick phlegm at Momoi Rutaru. Smack. The thick phlegm was spat on Momoi Rutaru's face. Who would have thought that before a duel between masters, someone would spit? Momoi Rutaru was caught off guard and did not dodge. He, who had always loved cleanliness, was so disgusted that he almost stopped breathing. He was so angry that he almost fainted. How can you spit? Wuxia is known as the land of etiquette. How can you be so vulgar and rude? Momoi Rutaru quickly took out a silk handkerchief and wiped it several times. He did not attack immediately, but roared and questioned angrily. Who said that this is not etiquette? Jiang Tian said righteously. This is the rule of Wuxia's martial arts world. Before a battle, spit on the opponent's face to show contempt. It's the same as the Western gentleman throwing white gloves on the opponent's face before a duel. Is that so? If that's the case, then we have to learn it. Momoi Rutaru asked the people beside him in confusion. Maybe. The people beside him were speechless. At this time, was it necessary to care about such details? Don't interrupt my humiliation of you. Where did the humiliation stop? Jiang Tian waved his hand. Beside him, Dugushao interrupted. He introduced himself and said that he is the sword sage of Japan. Yes, you are the sword sage of Japan. Bah. Jiang Tian said disdainfully. You really know how to flatter yourself. You are still shameless enough to call yourself a sword sage when you are dancing around with a broken iron plate. What a disgrace. Good. Kong Teichu, you are really arrogant. Momoi Rutaru was so angry that he almost fainted. The hand holding the hilt tightened again, and his knuckles turned slightly white. The lacquer on the scabbard was mottled, and the carvings were blurred. It was thick and simple, exuding an aura of vicissitudes. However, those who had some understanding of the Japanese martial arts world did not dare to underestimate this treasured sword. They would tremble in fear and worship at the sight of it. The ancient sword Qingtong was made by the Japanese blacksmith Takeshi Sakumura during the Heian period. It was ranked 8th among the top 10 swords in Japan. Although it was not as famous as Muramasa, who was known as Japan's #1 demon sword. In terms of lethality, it was probably above Muramasa. This was because Muramasa had always been carried by famous generals like Toyotomi Hideyoshi and Tokugawa Ieyasu. Those who were killed were the leaders of ambitious and ruthless people. As for the Qingtong sword, it had been passed through many Japanese kendo experts in history. The people it killed were all ruffians like Saito Mikuro and Okita Soki, who were kendo experts and wanderers. Momoi Rutaru narrowed his eyes and said, Very well. Today I will show you the true power of Japanese kendo. The next moment, the green blade was unsheathed. No one saw how he made his move. A ray of green light shot up into the sky and slashed down like a mountain. At the same time, an extremely sharp, surging blade chi instantly wreaked havoc. The blade chi was earth-shattering. I didn't expect such a powerful weapon to exist in a small place like Japan. Jiang Tian exclaimed. This Qingtong saber had once drunk the blood of heroes and cut down the souls of giants. It had already formed a terrifying saber soul. It had used blood and souls to turn an ordinary sword into a Dharma artifact. Within the blade soul, the malice chi was heavy, the murderous intent was sharp, and the smell of blood was thick. It had already reached the level of soaked in the blood of millions. This formed an incomparably powerful spiritual deterrence. If an ordinary transcendent master saw this sword, his momentum would be weakened by 70%, and he would not be able to exert half of his combat power. If an ordinary person saw this, they would not even have the courage to resist or run away. This sword can't be destroyed. The soul energy can be absorbed. Jiang Tian was delighted to see this, and he threw a simple punch at the saber chi. Crack! The sound was so ear-piercing that it made people's eardrums ache and teeth ache. Under Jiang Tian's punch, the saber lights were shattered like paper, turning into fragments. Chapter 420. At the same time, Jiang Tian activated his immortal will. Whoosh! Xiao Hei's flying sword shot out of the air, leaving a trail of afterimages. It circled behind Momoi Rutaru at a speed beyond human eyes, and pierced through his back. Sword Sage behind you! Suddenly Greenwood King's pupils shrank. He suddenly noticed Xiao Hei's flying sword. While shouting, he made a series of hand seals in the air. In the forest, the grass that was fluttering in the wind quickly condensed into greenwood energy arrows under the urging of enduring breath. There were thousands of them, like two green streams, rushing toward Jiang Tian and Xiao Hei's flying sword. Pa, 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 pa. Xiao Hei's flying sword pierced through hundreds of wood chi arrows in an instant, but its speed was also slowed down. That was close. Momoi Rutaru dodged the attack by a hair's breadth. With sweat on his forehead, he slashed at Jiang Tian and Xiao Hei's flying sword. He only saw a flash of black shadow, and didn't notice the killing intent of Xiao Hei's flying sword. If it weren't for Greenwood King's warning, he would have been killed. Damn it! Shameless! You don't follow the rules of Jianghu. You want to gang up on me? Du Guxiao roared angrily, holding a demon head saber that he had obtained from somewhere. He leaped up and slashed at the Greenwood King like a falling galaxy. How come there are so many overlords in Wuxia? Greenwood King knew that Du Guxiao's strength was definitely above the peak of the transcendent state. Greenwood shield, block for me. In a moment of desperation, he let out a shout and clawed at the air in a fluster. Bang! Bang! Two shields mixed with greenwood chi formed in his hands. He raised his fire-burning sky, trying to block the attack. At the same time, all the plants within a 20-meter radius withered. Flowers and leaves withered. Some trees even exploded and turned into dust. He had absorbed all the wood chi. He was an S-level ninja and an immortal state ninja. His strength had increased and was comparable to a half-step immortal state warrior. The two shields were as thick as a dozen meters of planks compressed together. They were extremely sturdy and could withstand a cannonball attack. What did you say? I don't understand. Who cares? Go to hell. Du Guxiao laughed maniacally, and his body fell like a meteor. His saber did not stop. The saber will was strong and inextinguishable. Saber force, pressing forward with indomitable will. It was as if the heavens were about to be torn apart, and the earth was about to collapse. Boom! Crack! A thunder-like explosion was heard. The two shields of enduring suddenly trembled and vibrated. Under Du Guxiao's tyrannical attack, the Redwood King's knees bent and kneeled on the ground. His knees smashed two deep holes into the mountain rocks. The veins on his arms bulged like earthworms, and his muscle fibers hardened like steel. His arms quickly thickened and swelled, and then, like broken porcelain, they were covered in cracks and blood spurted out. You can't kill me! Greenwood King roared and struggled, trying to stand up. His Greenwood ninja continued to pour into the shield. What are you talking about? Fight properly and don't talk nonsense. Du Guxiao's saber aura didn't diminish in the slightest, and it seemed to have the power to destroy everything in its path. In the next moment, the shields of enduring suddenly shattered. The remains of the ninja burst out like shrapnel in an explosion, sending the surrounding boulders a few meters away. Many Japanese masters were thrown off their feet. Whoosh! With a boom, the cold light struck down like lightning. Waves of blood gushed out. Greenwood King was slashed from his left shoulder to his right rib. His body was split into two pieces and fell to the ground. Greenwood King, the S-class mutant, the fifth master of the Sakura Blossom Association, was dead. All the Japanese were dumbfounded. They were deeply shocked, and their eyes were filled with fear. Greenwood King's strength was certainly not as strong as Japanese sword sage Ryutaro Momoi, but he was at least a half-step immortal state, or even immortal state. However, he was killed by this young man with one slash. Was this the end of the Sakura Blossom Association? Why did so many overlords suddenly appear? Was one Kong Teichu not enough? Du Guxiao pointed at everyone with his saber dripping with blood and shouted arrogantly, "Let's see who dares to break the rules. I'll kill you with one slash." Ms. Ishii Yulian, please translate. Although he had learned a few words of Japanese on the way, he was still very unfamiliar with it. So he was speaking in Chinese. Outside the circle, Ishii Yulian smiled and translated, "Mr. Gudu, please don't make a move. Please maintain the fairness of the duel. Ishii, I want to warn him to get out of Japan immediately. Otherwise he will be finished with Kong Taechu. How do you say it in Chinese? Sasaki Aisha frowned and shouted. You are my grandfather, and I am your grandson. Please spare my life, Grandpa Wuxia. Ishii Yulian smiled and said. Whoosh. A cold light flashed, and Sasaki Aisha unsheathed half of her saber as a deterrent. She frowned and her face was as cold as frost. She angrily scolded. You are my grandfather and I am your grandson. Please spare my life, Grandpa Wuxia. Ha ha ha, Japanese people are so funny. This Japanese girl is willing to be my grandson, but she still has to be so anxious. Her EQ is lower than mine. Du Guxiao laughed until tears came out of his eyes. Then he waved his hand and said, Don't be so noisy. Watch the show. Watch how my novice brother beat your Japanese sword saint into a grandson. He sat on a rock and took out a bag of melon seeds to eat. Ishii, what did he say? Sasaki Aisha frowned and asked. He said that he won't just be a bystander. If you don't make a move, he won't make a move either. Ishii Yulian smiled and said in Japanese. Everything happened in half a minute, but the battle between Jiang Tian and Momoi Ritteru had reached its climax. Momoi Ritteru had already slashed out 8 times. Life extermination. Mirror stand. Army destruction. Water split. His Qingtong sword slashed out continuously, and each strike was more exquisite and graceful than the last. In the end, it gave people a feeling of natural charm. But in fact, the lethality of each strike was also increasing. Each strike was stronger than the previous one. Even if Wang Chongyan and Xiaobin were here, they would have to avoid it. Even if Yi Zhantian were to fight back, he would be flustered and exhausted. However, all of this was useless against Jiang Tian. No matter how Momoi Ritteru changed his sword moves, Jiang Tian always greeted it with a simple punch. However, he could always break his sword momentum, sword chi, and sword chi easily. This man's physique is so strong. He broke my sword chi with his physical body. It seems that he didn't even use his true chi. Momoi Ritteru began to feel a little anxious. This man was like a cockroach that refused to die. No matter how exquisite his sword moves were, what was the use? He made up his mind and finally decided to use his strongest move. Kong Taechu, it's time to end this. With a loud shout, he stomped his feet on the ground, sinking more than 3 inches into the ground. His face instantly flushed red. The Qingtong horizontal slash, vertical slash, swift stab, and whirlwind slash, swift stab, whirlwind slash, swift stab, and whirlwind slash over 100 times in a row. His speed was extremely fast and dazzling. What was more shocking was that every time he slashed out, hundreds of extremely sharp sword chi would appear in the space above and behind him. These sword chi were all made up of sword chi. They were so condensed and sharp as if they were real. Under the light of the early autumn sun, they emitted a dazzling metallic luster. He was doing his best. His speed was very fast, but it was also very elegant. He was like a sword immortal who had descended to the mortal world, and was waving his sword. Oh my God! Could it be that Lord Sword Sage has cultivated the legendary, impossible move, of the School of Mirror Heart Wisdom? The number of sword chi above and behind Momoi Ritteru increased. Many of the Japanese overlords were shocked. Sasaki Haisha even let out a cry as if he had seen a ghost. With a loud boom, a strong wind howled in the sky above the area where Momoi Ritteru was. Streams of air converged and formed large clusters of dark clouds, which rapidly rotated and rubbed against each other, forming a vortex that seemed to go straight to the depths of the sky. Bolts of lightning burst out like silver snakes dancing wildly. Oh my God! A vision from the sky. The impossible move? Could it be? Hearing this, the Japanese overlords were all moved. They looked at Momoi Ritteru with shock, respect and expectation. In just one breath's time, Xiaochen had sent out 100 saber slashes. Over 10,000 sharp saber lights floated and flickered above Xiaochen's head. They were densely packed, covering the sky and covering the sun. They stretched for over 10 meters, making one's hair stand on end. School of Mirror Mind, ultimate move. After the last slash, Momoi Ritteru's face was as pale as a sheet of paper. He panted and shouted hoarsely. His body was shaking as if he was about to fall. He seemed to have aged a few times in an instant. He looked at Jiang Tian tiredly and said, Kong Teichu, my school of mirror mind has absorbed the essence of the kendo of various countries. I, Momoi Rituru, have been working hard for 20 years. Today, you are lucky to see the most powerful move of my school of mirror mind. 10,000 swords in one. As soon as he finished speaking, countless sword chi suddenly merged amidst the ear-piercing sound of metal rubbing against each other. A gigantic sword chi that was comparable to a skyscraper suddenly appeared in front of everyone. It's really 10,000 swords in one. Oh my god. 10,000 swords in one. The sword sage has mastered 10,000 swords in one. At that moment, the Japanese overlords' faces changed drastically. They were full of reverence and worship as if they had seen a god appear. That's 10,000 swords in one. No wonder he became a sword sage at the age of 30. His comprehension and perseverance are not something I can compare to. Sasaki Haisha's face changed drastically as he muttered to himself. 10,000 swords in one. Miyamoto Hiro's face changed in shock. His eyes were full of reverence. Then he said with tears in his eyes, This time, the sword sage is going to take revenge for our Nomiya shrine. Brother, if your spirit in heaven can see this, you will be able to rest in peace. Swords were light and agile, unpredictable, and flexible to win. Momoi position. School of Mirror Mind emphasized sword momentum, tricks, and even beauty. But who would have thought that the ultimate move of this school, the true killing move of this school, was to win with terrifying and monstrous power? At that moment, 10,000 swords in one, wind and thunder rumbled. The sword chi was 100 meters long, like a rainbow piercing the sun. Even the citizens of the city at the foot of the mountain could see it. Such a spectacular scene could not be called kendo. It could be regarded as an immortal art or a divine skill. Chapter 421. 10,000 swords in one. My grandmaster used it to kill thousands of soldiers and horses. Momoi Rituru snorted proudly. Fuck. It seems to be even more powerful than the sword cultivators of Mount Shu. Duguxiao was so scared that he dropped his melon seeds. He rushed out and tried to pull Jiang Tian to dodge. Brother Jiang Tian, why don't you dodge? Xiao, go away. But Jiang Tian, who bore the brunt of the attack, waved his sleeves and gently pushed Duguxiao aside. Then he put his hands behind his back and smiled disdainfully. It's big but useless. What's the use of a big sword? It's like a swollen patient that can't withstand a single blow. Jiang Tian had seen too many 10,000 swords in one and similar techniques in the cultivation world. Almost every immortal martial skill had a similar move. The principle was equivalent to compressing dozens or hundreds of attacks into one to form a superimposed lethality. But the essence of this technique was superimposition and condensation. 10,000 swords condensed into one sword, which would be indestructible and sharper. But if you only superimpose without condensation, the sharpness and toughness of the sword chi would not reach the same level. It was just equivalent to making multiple moves. It would be fine if you met an ordinary expert, but it was useless when you met a real expert. There were even disadvantages. As the saying goes, the person who used this technique would exhaust his chi and be completely powerless to resist. He would be at the mercy of others. My sword can chop, song, sheng. But Momoi Rituru did not seem to hear Jiang Tian's words. Instead, he looked solemn and made the last chop with difficulty, using all his strength to drive this amazing sword chi. His body was trembling violently, making a strange cracking sound. It seemed that all his bones were about to break. That was because his body could not withstand the pressure of the huge sword chi. But Momoi Rituru did not care at all. Even if the corner of his mouth was bleeding, he still pointed the tip of his sword at Jiang Tian and made a heavy chop. The huge sword light brought along a strange sound that sounded like the wailing of ghosts and howling of wolves. It was as if thousands of mountains were crashing down towards Jiang Tian. That's right, it wasn't a stab or a slash, it was a boom. At this moment, the sword beamed that was formed from 10,000 swords as one soared into the sky. It was like a high-speed train that was crashing down, as if it wanted to crush Jiang Tian into meat paste. Before the huge sword light had even arrived, a monstrous pressure had already arrived. Within 30 meters of Jiangtian, huge rocks weighing dozens of kilograms were sent flying dozens of meters away. The ground cracked open with a width of more than 3 centimeters. Countless trees bent, fell, and finally shattered into pieces, turning into dust. This sword chi not only contained the sword chi energy that Momoi Rituru had painstakingly cultivated for decades, but it also drew the spiritual chi of heaven and earth within a radius of several hundred meters. This was the power of heaven and earth, the power of nature. Even 1/10 of it could crush an armored vehicle. No matter how strong the armor was or how sturdy the metal was, it would be flattened into a lump of iron. Kong Teichu, this sword saint shall use this sword to test your supreme martial arts. Momoi Rituru shouted. Boom. With a sound, the huge sword slashed down. Countless grenades seemed to explode on the ground, and countless huge fireworks rose. Circles of white air ripples spread to the surroundings. The entire area of hundreds of meters was in a mess. Towering trees were uprooted and torn into pieces by the surging airflow. Huge rocks were smashed and exploded by the sharp sword chi. That area was enveloped by the sharp sword chi, the scattered remains and debris, and the turbid chi waves. It was a scene of chaos. The terrifying explosion spread for several miles. Even the residents at the foot of Tori Mountain could hear it clearly. What's wrong? Is there an explosion at Tori Mountain? Is it a quarry? How is it possible? Tori Mountain is a scenic spot where the Nomiya Shrine is located. Who dares to quarry there? Or maybe a volcano eruption? Many citizens looked up and discussed among themselves. Today, Tori Mountain could be said to be full of strange phenomena. First, there was thunder and lightning. Then there was a 100-meter-long white rainbow. And now there was an earth-shattering explosion. It was like a volcano eruption. However, this was just a temporary topic for the residents of Fukuoka Prefecture. They would soon forget about it. After all, the missile test launched by the self-defense forces was regarded as a UFO by the people of Fukuoka, but for the many Japanese overlords who were standing halfway up the mountain, this was an earth-shattering battle. The result would determine the strength of Japanese kendo and Wuxia martial arts. It would even affect the development of the cultivation world of the two countries for the next 10 years. Great! Kong Teichu the devil is finally dead. Lord Sword Saint, 10,000 swords in one, the best in the world. Today you slay the evil, Kong Teichu, and show the power of Japanese kendo. Please accept our worship. Halfway up the mountain, there was a burst of cheers. Many people even knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Momoi Rituru with reverence. Momoi Rituru stood proudly on the spot with the help of Sasaki Kaisha, but he said with a little regret, "It's a pity that this sword is too powerful. I'm afraid that even his divine soul was destroyed. Otherwise, we could have refined a new god." Sasaki Kaisha looked at Dugu Xiao and Ishii Yurin with a sneer and said fiercely, "This Wuxia boy is Kong Teichu's accomplice. He killed King Aoki, so we can't let him go." Ishii Yurin betrayed the Sakura Society. Her crime is unforgivable. She must be sentenced to death and cut into pieces. She was only in her 30s. She looked charming, but her actions were ruthless and cruel to the extreme, leaving no room for negotiation. Kong Teichu is dead? When many overlords exclaimed, Ishii Yurin panicked and slowly retreated down the mountain path with regret in his heart. He was too reckless to believe Kong Teichu. No matter how strong he was still young and weak. How could he be a match for the Japanese sword saint? If he had known this, he wouldn't have followed him in the first place. Even if he revealed his whereabouts to Momoi Rituru yesterday, he was afraid that he couldn't make up for his mistake. He would be cruelly cleaned by them and die without a burial place. Brother Chu is dead? Dugu Xiao opened his eyes wide, trying to see through the rolling dust and air waves to see Jiang Tian's situation. Although he and Jiang Tian had only known each other for a few days, Jiang Tian was the first person he met in the secular world. He had already regarded Jiang Tian as a brother. Of course, he didn't want Jiang Tian to die. However, if he was killed by such a terrible sword, even the 200-year-old living fossil in the Yin sect wouldn't be able to withstand it. Thinking of this, Dugu Xiao's eyes were filled with tears. He held his long sword and rushed toward Momoi Rituru. He roared angrily, "You little devil, I'm going to chop you up and feed you to the dogs to avenge my brother Chu." However, he had only rushed a few steps when he saw a flash of golden light. A golden figure stepped out of the rolling dust. Is that the divine soul that hasn't been destroyed? Everyone was shocked and stepped back. They saw that Jiang Tian's body was covered with a layer of strange metallic luster. He was like a golden statue of Buddha, flashing with dazzling golden light. Like a Buddha or a god. The golden light was brilliant and filled with a holy, mighty, and powerful aura. Even his hair and eyebrows were golden. Many remnants of sword chi were attached to the golden light, causing it to flicker. However, they didn't penetrate it, let alone hurt Jiang Tian's body. It wasn't until he took a step forward that the dazzling golden light slowly faded and converged into his body. He returned to his black-haired and black-eyed appearance. Many remnants of sword chi also collapsed and dissipated into nothingness. Kang Taechu, you're not dead. Brother Chu, you're awesome. Sai, where did you get this golden light from? Is it cool? Ishi Yulian exclaimed, his face full of disbelief. Duguxiao cheered and jumped for joy. He was so happy that he did 3 somersaults like a monkey. Unknowingly, tears rolled down his face. Many of the Japanese powerhouses seemed to have been slapped countless times in an instant. Their faces changed drastically, and were full of astonishment and shock. In an instant, the entire place was deathly silent, and not a single sound could be heard. Kang Taechu. He's not dead. Many people looked at the young man who was strolling over leisurely. Their faces changed drastically and they couldn't believe it. Why couldn't Momoi Rutaru kill Kang Taechu after using the most powerful attack of 10,000 swords in one? Even the top overlords like Sasaki, Haisha Miyazaki and Han Shinzo were shocked, and took a step back subconsciously. Why are you not dead? That's the 10,000 swords in one of the Mirror Heart Wise sect. How did you break it? What kind of sorcery did you use? Momoi Rutaru's face was pale. He couldn't believe it, and was even a little anxious and flustered. How dare you talk to me like that? Do you want to die? Jiang Tian flicked his finger, and a golden light shot out. Everyone saw a flash of golden light, and a bloody hole appeared on Momoi Rutaru's chest. Blood spurted out crazily. President. Lord Sword Sage. Seeing this, many Japanese overlords exclaimed. They didn't expect that he couldn't block Jiang Tian's finger. Tell me, how did I lose? Momoi Rutaru covered his chest and knelt on the ground, looking at Jiang Tian and asking. Fine, I'll let you know the reason before you die. Jiang Tian smiled faintly and said, 10,000 swords in one? You only have 10,000 swords, not one. Let me teach you a sentence. You should forge a sword into an awl, and an awl will lead to great sharpness. The awl may be small, but it's sharp. That's the only way to achieve your most powerful attack. I see. Huaxia's martial arts are really profound. I understand now. Momoi Rutaru's eyes shone as if he had a momentary recovery of consciousness before death. He seemed very excited. After saying that, his eyes dimmed. He fell to the ground and closed his eyes. There was still a satisfied and enlightened smile on his face. Lord Sword Sage. President is dead. Many Japanese overlords knelt on the ground and cried out in pain and shock. They didn't even have time to stand up. However, they had been worshipping him before. Now they were reminiscing and lamenting. Everyone was shocked and couldn't believe it. Momoi Rutaru, the Sword Sage of Japan, was conferred the title by the emperor himself. Since his debut, he had never been defeated except once when he was defeated by the origin of the old Sword God Palace. How powerful, how glorious, and how amazing was he. Today he died under Kang Taechu's finger. He didn't even have the strength to fight back or dodge. Little did they know that when Momoi Rutaru used the 10,000 swords in one, he had already exhausted all his cultivation. Even if he succeeded in killing Jiang Tian, he wouldn't be able to recover his cultivation for at least 3 years. And just now he was so weak that an ordinary person could have knocked him to the ground with a punch. Not to mention, Jiang Tian's finger was as sharp as an armor-piercing bullet shot from a Barrett sniper rifle. Chapter 422. Lord Sword Sage, you are dead. Many of the Kendo masters had been taught by Momoi Rutaru and regarded him as their teacher. They were so heartbroken that they knelt on the ground and burst into tears. She was the head of the Sakura Society and had a supreme status. Her status was even higher than Yi Zhantian's in Wuxia. Momoi Riduru was their faith, the god in their hearts. Now that he had fallen, they felt that the sky had collapsed, and they could no longer live. Kong Teichu, you will pay with your life for Lord Sword Sage. Some of the kendo masters leaped to their feet and lunged at Jiang Tian. The long blade at his waist was pulled out like lightning. Thousands of snow-like blade auras were swept up as they slashed towards Jiang Tian. You are asking for it. Jiang Tian raised his brows. He didn't even need to lift a finger. Instead, a golden Gingjin Qi wave surged out. Kaboom! With a boom, under the gung metal energy wave that was like raging waves beating the shore, whether it was a sword master or a peerless divine weapon, they all collapsed in an instant, blasted into pieces. Blood splashed everywhere as the kendo master's body fell to the ground in pieces. Everyone stop. Sasaki Kaisha's expression changed drastically. He raised his hand and stopped the kendo masters who were ready to attack. Then he concealed his murderous intent and bowed to Jiang Tian respectfully. Master Kong, you are here to visit the Nomiya Shrine, right? That's right. To be exact, I am here to devour the 3 Shikigami to cultivate my powerful soul energy. Jiang Tian had his hands behind his back, looking calm and composed. His tone was also very natural, as if he was saying that the price of gasoline had increased recently. This man is so arrogant. How dare he? He is a demon. Many of the Japanese overlords were enraged by what they heard. They wanted to skin Jiang Tian alive to vent their anger. Nomiya Shrine on Tori Mountain worshipped the 3 Shikigami, Tengu, Sikhen, and Choyu. They were the guardians of Kyushu. They had tens of thousands of believers praying for blessings and worship every day. In the hundreds of years that they had existed, they had absorbed the power of faith and smoke and were incomparably powerful. It was said that during the Warring States period, a Shikigami could fight against 1,000 enemies. They could overturn a city with one hand and collapse a mountain with one stomp. Their soul energy was especially terrifying. Their strength was far beyond that of a normal half-step immortal state warrior, even comparable to an immortal state warrior. But this brat actually said that he wanted to devour 3 Shikigami? How arrogant was he? How arrogant was he? He was simply courting death. Master Kong, this road leads directly to Nomiya Shrine. We welcome Master Kong to visit us. Please. When Sasaki Ocean Sand heard that, his expression changed. Finally, he bowed and pointed his right hand at MT, one finger making an inviting gesture. The Japanese overlords behind him also parted and made a path for him. Jiang Tian looked at the black door that was like a monster opening its bloody mouth, and a disdainful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He was too lazy to say anything. With his hands behind his back, he walked up the stairs. We're really going. Quit while you're ahead? It's already very impressive. Duguxiao quickly followed behind him. Ishii Yulian hesitated as her expression changed. But in the end, she gritted her teeth and followed under the hateful and warning gazes of the Japanese overlords. Brother Chu, why do I feel that this place is eerie? Stepping into the silent Nomiya Shrine, Duguxiao suddenly shivered and said with a strange expression. Nomiya Shrine was very elegant and quiet. Green plants and trees were everywhere, and the clean green stone paved the way. The buildings of the Edo period had never been damaged. They were antique and exquisite like an exquisite garden. But Duguxiao felt a chill in his heart. A chill ran down his spine, as if there was some evil spirit. Ishii, are these the statues of the 3 Shikigami? Jiang Tian slowly walked into a temple and looked at the 3 3-meter-tall statues. A disdainful smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. At this moment, Ishii Yulian suddenly pulled Jiang Tian's sleeve and knelt down. Grandmaster Jiang, please leave quickly. Why? Jiang Tian looked at him curiously. I lied to you. Ishii Yulian prostrated on the ground. His face was filled with pain and regret. He said with a trembling voice. You can't summon the 3 Shikigami even if you take away the soul-guiding flute. In fact, even if you don't use the soul-guiding flute, Kumo Yunwen can still summon the Shikigami with his Dharma treasures. Besides, he should have brought the 3 Shikigami from the Guardian Shrine. The snake, the evil dragon, and the mountain tiger. There are 6 Shikigami here. It's a deadly trap. Fuck Ishi Yulian, you are so mean. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? Dugu Xiao immediately became anxious and hurriedly said, Brother Chu, I told you to stay away from women, didn't I? My master said that the women at the foot of the mountain are tigers. Ishi Yulian, why did you lie to me? Jiang Tian's expression didn't change as he asked leisurely. Yesterday, I didn't have 100% confidence that Master Kong would win. Ishi Yulian sighed with tears in his eyes. He said helplessly. Besides, even if you defeat the Sword Saint and Sword God, you will still die if the Japanese self-defense forces attack. You are a Wuxia person. You can leave after the matter is over. But my parents are in Japan. I can't leave. Get up. Since this is your first offense, I will spare your life. Jiang Tian said with a faint smile. You are not leaving? Ishi Yulian's face changed. Why should I leave? A hint of disdain appeared on the corners of Jiang Tian's mouth, and he said indifferently, I told you the itinerary because I wanted to draw them all here. The more Shikigami the better. I want to catch them all in one fell swoop, so that I don't have to destroy those shrines one by one. Ishi Yulian was completely stunned as he looked at Jiang Tian in disbelief. Did he really expect everything today and was not afraid at all? Did he really have a way to suppress these Shikigami? This was like a legend. Kong Teichu, even if you want to leave, do you still have time? The moment you step into the shrine, you are destined to be buried here. Suddenly a sneer was heard. In the darkness, a skinny figure with sinister eyes slowly appeared. He wore a tall crown on his head, a loose robe with a wide belt, and wooden clogs on his feet. Around his waist hung a few strange jade pendants, human bones, and other magical items. He looked like an old monster from the Heian era, with a simple and ancient temperament. He spoke Chinese very fluently, like a sinologist who had lived in Wuxia for many years. Kamo Yimwen. He is the #1 on Myoji in Japan, the Grand Priest of the Guardian Shrine. Ishi Yulian's face changed as he quickly hid behind Jiang Tian. The Guardian Shrine? Jiang Tian was taken aback, but he knew that this was a notorious shrine that worshipped many Class A war criminals. Visiting the Yasukuni Shrine had become a way for politicians like Koinu Junichiro to win over voters and display their right-wing ideology. The visits of Japanese politicians had ruined the relationship between Japan, Wuxia, South Korea, and other Asian countries. Very well. I will cut you into 8 pieces today, and use your blood to pay tribute to those who sacrificed themselves for the liberation of Wuxia. Jiang Tian's heart skipped a beat. Jiang Taichu, you really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. You're courting death. Kamo Yunwen said with disdain. Even Yi Tianren and the members of the Yin sect wouldn't dare to set foot in the 4 major shrines of Japan. You're just a Shina clown. How dare you provoke a Japanese Shikigami? What a joke. Brother Chu, this old man is so annoying. Let me get rid of him. Dugu Xiao was enraged by Kamo Yunwen's words. He leaped out like a tiger and hacked at Kamo Yunwen with his blade. Despite his young age, he was considered a cultivation prodigy and had the power of a half-step immortal state warrior. With a slash of the saber, the wind howled and the saber light formed a bright saber screen. It was incomparably sharp and could even cut an armored vehicle into pieces. How dare you? Ugly ox god, come out. Seeing this, Mao Yunwen roared angrily. He grabbed a jade ox head from his waist and crushed it. Suddenly, a terrifying spiritual energy shot up into the sky, surging like raging waves crashing against the shore, bombarding in all directions. Kaboom! Half of the palace had collapsed. Bricks and stones flew everywhere, and the roof beams were shattered. It was a complete mess. The soul energy had materialized. It might not be as powerful as Jiang Tian's divine will, but it was much more powerful than Jiang Tian's divine will. If any martial artists or spellcasters saw this, they would be terrified. This wasn't a physical attack, it was a pure soul energy. However, it was able to interfere with reality so obviously that not even a Tao body immortal master could do so. That was how powerful the soul energy of this Shikigami was. Under the powerful soul energy attack, Dugu Zhao's body suddenly froze in the air. Then the soul energy vibrated again. He was blasted away like a rag doll. He was dizzy from the fall, and 2 streams of blood seeped out of his nostrils. As for Ishii Yuren, even though he was a few dozen meters away, he was still wobbling like a small boat in the middle of a raging storm. This was the power of a Shikigami. They could tear a normal Grandmaster apart with their soul energy alone. Not even a peak-stage transcendent Grandmaster was a match for them. The wave-like spiritual power suddenly condensed. A huge figure that was over 5 meters tall blurred at first, then became more and more solid, and finally appeared abruptly. His head was as big as a bucket, and there were 2 curved horns on the back of his head. He was wearing a golden armor, which barely covered his long black hair. He wore black boots, and he had a pair of big eyes. 2 streams of white smoke were spurting out of his upturned nostrils. He was holding a steel fork that was shining with cold light, making him look like an indomitable bull demon king. Fuck, what is this thing? It's terrifying. Duga Xiaodao was nowhere to be seen. He sat on the ground and looked up at the tall figure of the ugly ox god in a daze. This is the ugly bull god. Ishii Yuren's face paled as he saw the ugly bull god for the first time. His body trembled as he took a few steps back. It is a real soul energy and it is so big. Is it really a god? Seeing this, Jiang Tian was also shocked. Chapter 423. It could be said that Jiang Tian's divine sense was only 1/10 of the opponent's psyche power. It was rare to see such a large amount of psyche power. However, in the next moment, Jiang Tian lightly shook his head with a hint of disdain. So it's the condensation of the believer's power of will, power of faith, and incense offerings. Although there's a lot of it, it's filthy and impure. At most, it's just a bunch of impurities. In fact, Jiang Tian could more or less guess the origin of these so-called Shikigami by combining the ancient records and the information provided by Yi Zhantian. During the Heian era of Japan, the people lived in destitution. There were many remote mountains and marshes, where bandits and monsters ran rampant. At that time, the Yin-Yang masters of the Kumo and Ampere families hunted monsters everywhere. They tamed these monsters and turned them into their pets or servants. However, the cultivation resources on Earth were scarce. These monsters could not break through to become immortal monsters, and their lifespans were not more than 300 to 400 years. They all died with their masters. However, their souls were not destroyed. They were born with divine strength and all kinds of abilities. Gradually, they became the gods that the Japanese worshipped. For hundreds of years, the souls of the monsters combined with the believer's psyche power to form the half-monster, half-ghost, half-immortal, half-human monsters. Shikigami, also known as servant spirits, meant that they served their yin-yang masters and were controlled by their masters. The name was actually very appropriate. Speaking of which, these Shikigami were not as powerful as the battling sacred ape Qi Aosheng. After all, the latter had become a true immortal monster and could transform into a human form. As for them, they were just monsters before they died. You are Kong Teichu? What a powerful psyche power. Very good. Very good. Today, I will devour all of your psyche power and use it for my own use. The ugly ox god slammed its steel fork into the ground, creating a 3-meter deep crater. It bent over and looked greedily at Jiang Tian as it roared. That voice was like rolling thunder that pushed out horizontally, causing many palaces to tremble violently and trees to sway crazily. The Japanese experts who were waiting for the good news outside the shrine were also on the verge of collapsing. The ugly ox god is on the move. God, this time Kong Teichu is dead for sure. Many Japanese overlords retreated with pale faces, but they were still excited as if they could already see Jiang Tian's death. Really? You want to devour me? The way I see it, you're my best resource. It's just that you're not enough. However, Jiang Tian was not afraid at all. Instead, he became even more greedy. He was like a glutton who had seen a table full of delicacies, a pervert who had seen a stunning beauty, or a miser who had dug out a large bucket of gold. What? All right then, watch how I, old bull, devour your divine soul. The ugly ox god's eyes widened in anger as he breathed out 2 streams of thick white air from his nostrils. He waved his 3-pronged pitchfork and strode toward Jiang Tian. Every step he took caused the earth to shake and the mountains to shake. Houses collapsed as he waved his pitchfork, sending rocks and trees flying everywhere. This kind of monstrous power, and this kind of soul energy could easily kill a grandmaster in his peak state. Even a half-step immortal state warrior would not be able to defeat him. It was truly shocking. Eat my pitchfork. He jumped up 10 meters high and the pitchfork pierced through the void and stabbed toward Jiang Tian's chest, as if he wanted to nail Jiang Tian's soul to the ground. Sword of Divine Sense kill. At this moment, Jiang Tian finally used his trump card. He had been waiting for an opportunity all this time. When he was close enough, a golden light flickered between his eyebrows like a rippling golden lake. A golden dagger was formed, and it streaked across the air, shooting out a brilliant ray of light. Divine Sense Manifestation. This was the ultimate move of the soul sculpting art. It was created by revered Renming, the sect master of the God-refining sect, in the outer space. It could even destroy the soul avatar of a cultivator, let alone a Shikigami. The inch-long Divine Sense sword was condensed from Jiang Tian's Divine Sense, and was compressed to the extreme. At this time, Jiang Tian wanted to kill his target with one strike. He had condensed his Divine Sense into a sword, and could not release it. It could be said that he was going all out. The Divine Sense sword was as dazzling as a rainbow as it pierced through the void. The few people present could not breathe. Even Kumo Yunwen's expression changed drastically as he retreated. This was a kind of Divine Sense suppression that even a Grand Onmyoji could not withstand. The Divine Sense sword's speed was incomparably fast. Even though Ugly Ox God's pitchfork was still a few meters away from Jiang Tian, the Divine Sense sword had already pierced through Ugly Ox God's head. Under everyone's incredulous gazes, the Ugly Ox God, who was over 5 meters tall and had a body like a mountain, was actually knocked down by the small consciousness sword. He flew several dozen meters away, and was nailed to the mountain wall with a clang. Ew! The Ugly Ox God let out a painful roar. He struggled with all his might, sweeping away the rocks and shaking the mountains. His huge body instantly collapsed into a misty aura. How is this possible? Ishii Yulian's expression changed drastically. His charming eyes were full of disbelief. The Ugly Ox God was a real Shikigami. In hundreds of years, it was unknown how much spiritual energy it had condensed. It was so powerful that it could not be estimated. But at this moment, it was not a match for Jiang Tian, and was instantly killed by Jiang Tian. What was even more terrifying was that Jiang Tian did not use that black flying sword at all. He did not use the martial arts he was most proficient in. Instead, his forehead flashed as if he had used pure spiritual energy to destroy the Shikigami. It could be said that the weak defeated the strong. It must be known that the Shikigami were most proficient in spiritual attacks. This was too incredible. This Wuxia brat's spiritual energy is so powerful. Even Kumo Yunwen's expression changed drastically as he took a few steps back. He originally thought that Jiang Tian's words were just a bluff. He did not expect that Jiang Tian really had a way to destroy the Shikigami, and so easily. At this moment, his mind was filled with thoughts. Should he fight to the death or escape with the remaining Shikigami? Just as he was hesitating, Jiang Tian grabbed the soul-guiding flute and began to play. The sound of the flute was very low. It was as if resentment and admiration, as if weeping and complaining. It was soft and gentle, but it seemed to have a magical power that moved people's souls. It made them feel as if they had fallen into a dream and wanted to sleep peacefully. Ishii Yulian only felt dizzy. Plop. He fell to the ground and could not help but want to close his eyes. So sleepy, I want to sleep. The many Japanese masters outside the door were also fighting to keep their eyelids open. They felt as if they had not slept for more than 10 days, and were lying in their mother's arms. It was warm and comfortable, and they could not muster up any energy. Holy shit, as expected of an expert. He still has the time to play a flute in the middle of a battle. Duguxiao wiped the dust off his face and laughed. What the fuck, what flute? This is a flute. Jiang Tian really wanted to slap him to the ground, but his mouth and fingers didn't stop, and he continued to blow on it. What's going on? Why did the Ugly Ox God's scattered spiritual energy go into the flute? Kumo Yunwen's expression changed drastically as he exclaimed. However, he saw that the ugly ox god's mental energy, which had been crushed, was like a clear and misty tentacle. It was all absorbed by the soul-guiding flute before the song even ended. This song is called Lost Soul Attraction. It's used to absorb the spiritual energy of wandering souls. Together with the soul-guiding flute that I have refined, it's like having the help of God. Now this spiritual energy is mine. It's just waiting for me to refine it. Jiang Tian smiled faintly, feeling very proud. What? How is that possible? Kamo Yunwen was shocked. If Kong Teichu really had such an evil technique, wouldn't he be the nemesis of Shikigami? Release your Shikigami now, or I'll kill you. Jiang Tian smiled coldly as he approached Kamo Yunwen with the soul-guiding flute. Kamo Yunwen was caught between a rock and a hard place. Large drops of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. If he did not release his Shikigami, he would be killed by Jiang Tian easily with his Yin-Yang Jutsu. However, if he released his Shikigami, Jiang Tian would really use the evil song to control it. Then, he would become a resource for Jiang Tian to refine his spiritual energy. Still not releasing it? Do you want to die? Jiang Tian took out Xiao Hei's flying sword and let it float in front of his chest. That's right. Release it now and let me kill you. Otherwise, I'll skin you alive. Dugu Xiao picked up his sword and waved it around, threatening Chen Xiaobei. I'll release it. Master Kong, please have mercy. Master Kong, don't kill me. Kamo Yunwen was so scared that his body trembled. He could only feel a bitter taste in his mouth. This is too ridiculous. This scene made Ishii Yurin dumbfounded. He even wanted to laugh. Anyone who heard the name of a Shikigami would tremble in fear. Even a half-step divine realm expert would be afraid of them. Whoever took control of a Shikigami and became a great divine official would be like a god who ruled over the common people. They would be high and mighty, with their noses in the air, and regarded human lives as ants and weeds. But now Jiang Tian was forcing Grand Divine Official Kamo to release his Shikigami. If you don't release it, I'll kill you. Kamo Yunwen was unwilling to release his Shikigami as he was afraid that Jiang Tian would eat them. However, he had no choice but to release them. It was a funny feeling. Kamo Yunwen slowly pulled down a jade idol. His malicious eyes rolled around as if he was in pain. Suddenly he clenched his teeth and smirked. He crushed 5 jade idols hanging on his waist. Old man, why did you release them one by one? Why did you release so many of them at once? Are you doing this on purpose? I'll kill you with one strike. Seeing this, Dugu Xiao was furious. But it was too late. The moment the 5 jade idols were crushed, 5 surging spiritual energy rushed out. The void trembled and blurred. In the whistling wind, Shikigami appeared one after another. At this time, Jiang Tian was shocked. He was a bit careless. 5 Shikigami appeared in an instant. Even if he used the Sword of Divine Sense, he couldn't kill them instantly. It should be known that he took advantage of the unprepared situation and hit the Sea of Soul, formed by Ugly Ox God's spiritual energy. That was why he could kill them instantly. But if he didn't hit the Sea of Soul, it would be a fight. Jiang Tian might be in a passive position. After all, although these Shikigami weren't pure enough, they were too big and would cause damage to Jiang Tian's divine sense. Within the Nomiya shrine, 5 towering figures of the 5 Shikigamis appeared one after another. In an instant, killing intent filled the sky. Chapter 424. One of them was 10 meters tall. He had a snake-like neck and a human face. His 9 tails were like 9 tentacles. Each of them was holding a Dharma artifact such as a Vajra staff, a spear, a seal, and a shield. The other one had a pair of wings on his back. He had a dog face and a human body. He was 3 meters tall, and held a 1 meter long mace in his hand. The last one was 4 meters tall. He had a red crown and golden feathers. He had a long beak and golden eyes. He held a shield in his left hand and a chicken claw in his right hand. There was also the mountain tiger god and the evil dragon god. They were also as tall and mighty as demon gods. Their cultivation levels were higher than the 3 Shikigami in front of them. They were ready to take action at the back. Wuxia, how dare you offend our Shikigami? We will make sure you die a horrible death. The Vajra serpent god stuck out his long tongue and hissed. Even his divine soul must be destroyed. God Tengu roared, and many of his Shikigami pounced towards Jiang Tian. Boom. 5 surging soul energy surged toward Jiang Tian. Even though Jiang Tian's divine sense was powerful, he still felt suffocated. He felt a sharp pain in his head. Sword of divine sense, kill again. Since the arrow was already knocked on the bow, it had to be released. Jiang Tian's gaze turned cold as he shouted. The golden lake on his forehead rippled, and with a strange hiss, the divine sense sword shot toward the forehead of the vine serpent god. Bang! The Vajra serpent god's head shattered. At the same time, the Vajra serpent god's mace came crashing down. As for the skybreak deity's Vajra Pek, it swept out horizontally. Amidst a cold light, it whistled wildly as it attacked Jiang Tian's chest. Even though these Shikigami were formed by soul energy and soul energy, the weapons in their hands were very powerful Dharma artifacts. No one knew where they came from. They were ancient Dharma artifacts and contained powerful Dharma artifacts. If they appeared in the world of Dharma spells, they would cause a huge uproar. The 2 magic artifacts instantly struck out. The domineering magic power was released, and it suppressed Jiang Tian like raging waves crashing onto the shore. Go to hell. Jiang Tian took back the sword of divine sense in a split second, and immediately urged it to shoot out again. At the same time, a strand of spiritual awareness was separated. The black iron shuttle and little black flying sword in the storage ring flew out together. They turned into 2 streaks of black light, and pierced the glabella of the 2 leading spirit servers. God Tengu's body flickered as he twisted and turned. With a scream, Little Black's flying sword pierced through his shoulder. Roar! The heavenly hound god howled as he was sent flying by Shun's divine sense sword. As for the skybreak god, his chest was pierced by the black iron flying shuttle as he let out a furious roar. Kong Teichu, you can't kill us. Do you think you can be so lucky to hit our soul sea? However, the 3 Shikigami shook their bodies and gathered surging spiritual power to heal their wounds. Then they roared and pounced on Jiang Tian again. Damn, could it be that I didn't hit his soul sea? Where was his soul sea? How strange. What made Jiang Tian even more shocked was that the soaring serpent god's head that he had pierced through condensed again. He waved the 9 magic artifacts in his hands and attacked Jiang Tian together. Bang! Jiang Tian's spiritual awareness was activated. With a loud boom, the black iron flying shuttle broke through the air and smashed the heavenly hound god into pieces again. However, before he could catch his breath, the heavenly hound god started to condense again. At the same time, the skybreak god and soaring serpent god attacked together. Jiang Tian could still deal with the skybreak god's attack easily. However, the 9-tailed soaring serpent god was too difficult to deal with. 9 tails danced together, and the 9 magic artifacts covered the sky as they smashed down. Jiang Tian was caught off guard and was hit twice in an instant. Jiang Tian let out a muffled groan. Even though he had the aged metal divine body, he still felt waves of intense pain. He even felt like he couldn't breathe. The soaring serpent god's magic artifacts were so powerful that they were far beyond ordinary magic artifacts. They might even be at the level of magic treasures. The aged metal divine body didn't care about pure physical attacks. However, it was a little dangerous when facing magic treasures. Jiang Tian's expression became serious again. You guys are too slow. At this moment, an earth-shattering tiger roar sounded. The mountain tiger god had attacked. He stretched out his tiger claws and slapped down in the air. Rumble. The sound in the sky was like a millstone turning. A colorful tiger claw pressed down from the sky. It was 10 meters long and looked like an ancient god using the sky overturning seal, or a meteorite falling from the sky. The void distorted and a storm surged. Even if Jiang Tian could withstand this attack, he would be seriously injured. At this moment, if Jiang Tian attacked with the sword of divine sense, he would have to focus all of his divine sense. After all, he was only at the 5th level of Qi refinement. The amount of divine sense was limited. He wouldn't be able to split his divine sense to control the flying swords and shuttles. For a moment, Jiang Tian had no choice but to move around, using his body and his flying sword and shuttle to fight against the 5 Shikigamis. He fought so hard that the entire Noya shrine collapsed. The trees were broken, and the fake mountains and rocks were sent flying everywhere. Oh no! He's at a disadvantage. Let me help you. Seeing that Jiang Tian was gradually losing, Wuxia roared and charged forward with his blade. However, he was immediately stopped by the evil dragon god. He was completely suppressed by the enemy. In terms of true strength, Wuxia was a cultivation genius who was half a step away from the immortal state. He could completely suppress a Shikigamis. However, his psyche power wasn't strong enough and he wasn't good at psyche power attacks. He was in a tight spot. Haha, Kong Teichu is doomed this time. As expected, he can only deal with one Shikigamis. Seeing this, Kamo Yunwen was very proud. He knew that he had made the right bet. With the 5 Shikigamis attacking together, Kong Teichu couldn't resist at all. Just as Jiang Tian was surrounded by enemies from both sides, a thunderous voice suddenly sounded in everyone's mind. A few demon souls and a few bastards want to hurt the younger generation of Wuxia's heroes? Dream on. Kamo Yunwen turned his head and saw a tall figure flying toward him. While in the air, the figure had already swung his sword at the mountain tiger god. When this sword slashed out, the sword light was like a white rainbow piercing through the sun. It was 10 meters long and directly sliced off the mountain tiger god's head. The mountain tiger god's huge body was sent flying dozens of meters away. His soul sea was destroyed, and his mental power was dispersed. What a powerful sword. This sword is made of pure psyche power? Jiang Tian was shocked when he saw this, and he turned around to look. He saw that extraordinary figure was like an unsheathed sword, and that figure stood proudly above a hall. This person looked old and unsophisticated. He had a white beard and white hair. His white robe fluttered in the wind, making him look like an immortal. However, his figure was very faint. He emitted a clear white light that rippled like water. He looked very holy. What's his background? Jiang Tian scanned with his psyche power. Immediately, a surge of psyche power blasted toward Jiang Tian. His body shook slightly and his head hurt. He was shocked. It's formed by psyche power. It's a powerful psyche avatar. And his psyche power is so strong. What's his background? This time he had seen psyche avatars twice. The first time was the Battle Sacred Ape's psyche avatar on Mount Everest. The psyche power of a demonic immortal was extremely powerful. Even Jiang Tian, who was already in the mid-stage of qi refinement, could not withstand it. But this was not strange. After all, Qi Aoxing had already become a demonic immortal. The power of a demonic immortal was naturally terrifying. But now this psyche avatar was so powerful. Jiang Tian had a thought. Could the original body of this psyche power have also reached the level of an immortal? No matter how strong Jiang Tian was, he was still a little afraid. He could not tell how powerful this person's original body was. What a powerful psyche power. Seeing this scene, the spirit servers were all frightened. Their eyes were filled with fear, and they all took a few steps back and stopped their attacks. To be able to kill the mountain tiger god, who was ranked second among the Shikigami, this person's power was definitely not to be underestimated. They all felt the terrifying psyche power, as if their psyche power was about to be destroyed. But now, Jiang Tian did not have time to think. He took out the soul-guiding flute from his waist, and immediately blew the soulless lure to absorb the mountain tiger god's psyche power. Is this the immortal of Wuxia? Outside the door, Sasaki Haisha and the other Japanese overlords were terrified when they saw this figure. They couldn't help but step back. Brother Yi, why are you here? Jiang Tian's divine sense had already detected that Yi Zhantian was already leaping towards him like a giant bird. Jiang Tian's heart was filled with joy. Ihi brother, I am worried that you are alone. So I am here to help you. Yi Zhantian let out a long sigh. Brother Yi has summoned his father's psyche avatar. Jiang Tian saw that this person's features were similar to Yi Zhantian's, as if he was an old Yi Zhantian. This was indeed Yi Tianren's psyche avatar. Of course, even if Yi Tianren was at the peak of immortal state phenomenal success, his psyche avatar would not be able to travel thousands of miles across the sea to Japan. Yi Tianren must have made a Dharma artifact such as the Psyche Jade charm for Yi Zhantian to wear. Most of the mental jade amulets were one-time use instruments. Yi Zhantian probably didn't have many of them either. Every time he used one, he would have one less. To him it was a precious treasure. But this time, in order to help Jiang Tian, he used it without hesitation. This made Jiang Tian feel a little touched. Brother Yi, you used to have a military background. Your identity is sensitive. Did the government allow you to come here? Jiang Tian asked with a smile. There were many top nobles in Wuxia who wanted Jiang Tian dead. After all, he was too powerful and had severely weakened their authority. Jiang Tian could already feel the hostility of the White Emperor city. It could be said that whoever helped Jiang Tian would be the enemy of the Condor team and many other powerful officials. I am not going to hide for the sake of my country. So what if I am allowed to? Yi Zhantian's body was as straight as an unsheathed sword. His eyes shone brightly as he let out a hearty laugh. The Wuxia Long Formation is our duty to protect Wuxia and slay the evildoers. These Japanese bastards have caused trouble in Wuxia. They deserve to die. Today, you and I will join hands and sweep our swords across the heavens and earth. We will not return to our sheaths until we have slain all the Japanese experts. Chapter 425. Seeing this, Jiang Tian exclaimed in his mind. Wuxia is a country of etiquette and has never stirred up trouble in the world of international overlords. However, as a great country with thousands of years of history, how could there not be a few capable and responsible big shots in Wuxia? How could there not be a few proud people who could hold up the Great Wall of Steel? Be it Chao Shixiang in the military, Yi Tianren and his son in the martial arts world, or Tang Linglong and the rest of the younger generation of War Dragon, they were all unyielding and courageous people. Thinking back to when Heavenly Yi destroyed Zeus's divine punishment Sword of Thunder on the Qinchuan River, kicked away the origin of the East Ocean Sword Saint Palace, and suppressed the world's experts for decades. How domineering was that? However, due to the need to keep it a secret, these people kept a low profile, and many of their actions against evil overlords were not known to the world. Yi Tianren? He's actually still alive, and he's even come to Japan. At this moment, some Japanese overlords who had read the historical records stared at the person on the top of the main hall with a strange light in their eyes. They were extremely shocked. No, this is not Yi Tianren himself, but an avatar of his divine soul. How could an avatar of his divine soul be so powerful? Kumo Yunwen's body trembled and his hands trembled. Yi Tianren. This was a name that had been glorious for more than a century. His name had been known since the end of the Qing dynasty in Wuxia. It was said that he was as powerful as Zeus of the Pantheon during the Republic of China. He was a true immortal state overlord. According to legend, he was born a poor child. His parents died early, and he became a bandit in the White Mountains and Black Waters. He killed the rich to help the poor. Later, he obtained the ancient Daoqing scroll and reached the peak of the transcendent state in a few years. A year later, he entered the immortal state. In the 30s of the last century, he joined the army and supported the anti-Japanese liberation movement in Wuxia. He founded the Yellow Flame Iron Brigade and defeated the Blue Cloth Society, the Hong Sect, and the Nine-Story Tower. She had made great contributions to Wuxia. In the 90s, he made his last appearance. He transformed the Yellow Flame Iron Brigade into a long formation and handed it over to his son, Yi Zhantian, before disappearing. Some said that he had passed away, while others said that he had gone into hiding. But now, for some reason, his soul avatar had appeared out of thin air before his true body had appeared. But with just a divine soul doppelganger, could it be that he had already become a celestial being? Thinking of this, many Japanese overlords trembled and wanted to escape. Even the Shikigami panicked and took a few steps back, fully on guard. Fellow Taoist Jiang, this old man will lend you a hand in today's battle. Suddenly, the soul avatar turned to look at Jiang Tian, and a voice suddenly sounded in Jiang Tian's mind. Then, a series of information was transmitted to Jiang Tian's mind, which turned out to be the Sea of Soul, and the weak spots of the various Shikigami. Thank you for your guidance, Senior. Jiang Tian bowed slightly, a hint of shock on his face. It turned out that these Shikigami had used a secret technique to shift the position of their Sea of Soul. Some of them were not even at the center of their forehead. No wonder Jiang Tian could not kill them in one strike. Don't mention it, fellow Taoist Jiang. You are the most talented cultivator this old man has seen in the past century. I hope you can conquer Japan soon. Zhantian, let's do it together. Yi Tianren said in a low voice. Jiang Tian, let's do it. My father's divine soul can only hold on for 15 minutes. Let's do it quickly. Yi Zhantian's fighting spirit rose like a tidal wave as he looked at Jiang Tian, and said in a low voice. Do it. As soon as Jiang Tian's voice faded, a cold light flashed, and the sword on Yi Zhantian's back flew up by itself. Then as Yi Zhantian waved his finger, the sword slashed horizontally. A 5-meter-long sword light crashed down like mercury, causing the void to collapse, bringing with it an ear-piercing sword whistle. The blade aura flashed across the sky, isolating the Sichen god, the soaring serpent god, and the evil dragon god. Only Karasitengu, who was closest to Jiang Tian, was left standing. Count me in. Du Guxiao also joined in the fray. With a roar, he charged toward the Sichen god, who was trying to break free from Yi Zhantian's blade aura. Swish. 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 Jiang Tian's glabella rippled as the blade of divine soul pierced toward Karasitengu's abdomen. You know where my sea of soul is. Karasitengu was startled. He flapped his wings and shot up into the sky. Then he dashed out of the shrine like a gust of wind. Bastard! Don't even think about running. Yi Tianren's divine soul avatar struck out with a palm. It was like a giant wielding a giant axe, blotting out the sun. Roar! Karasitengu let out a cry of agony as he was sent flying. He landed 3 meters away from Jiang Tian's blade of divine soul. Yi Tianren's palm strike was impeccable in terms of strength, angle, speed, and accuracy. Senior, you are truly a master. Jiang Tian adjusted his blade of divine soul slightly. A dazzling golden light flashed across the air, and pierced through Karasitengu's sea of soul. Karasitengu instantly turned into wisps of soul energy. He could no longer condense and was sent flying in all directions. With the help of Yi Zhantian and Du Guxiao, as well as the support of Yi Tianren, the situation of the battle suddenly took a turn for the worse. Jiang Tian had the upper hand and was completely suppressing the opponent. The battle was very easy. Don't stop them. Let them come. Jiang Tian shouted when he saw that Yi Zhantian and Du Guxiao were having a hard time dealing with the 3 Shikigamis. We are retreating. Bro, be careful. Yi Zhantian and Du Guxiao leaped out, and the 3 Shikigamis charged toward Jiang Tian. Kong Teichu. Die. Tongue serpent god's sinister eyes glowed with resentment. His 9 tails wrapped around 9 different kinds of Dharma artifacts and swung them toward Jiang Tian. Go to hell. I will destroy your divine soul. Sichen leaped into the air and waved his Vajrapek wildly. Cold light flashed as he clawed at Jiang Tian. I will entangle you until you explode. The evil dragon god roared and transformed into his true form. He was a 20-meter-long vile poisonous dragon. Black smoke filled the air and poisonous fog came out of his mouth. His body was as thick as a gasoline barrel. He dashed toward Jiang Tian. Break. 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 Jiang Tian pushed his sword of divine will to the extreme and turned into rays of golden light. Wherever the light passed, the dimension was crushed. Wails and screams filled the air. It only took 3 minutes. Jiang Tian crushed the sea of soul of the remaining 3 Shikigamis as if he were cutting vegetables. The joint attack of the 6 Shikigamis collapsed in an instant. A deadly silence fell over the area. All the East Asian people were dumbfounded and speechless. Each of these Shikigamis was as powerful as an immortal state warrior, or even an immortal state warrior. They were especially good at soul energy attacks, and were almost immortal. Even an immortal state warrior would have a hard time dealing with them. However, Jiang Tian had killed them so easily. How can he be so powerful? Ishii Yuren's eyes widened in shock. She couldn't calm herself down for a long time. She had learned about the details of how Jiang Tian killed the new Shikigamis Ingo. She had heard that Jiang Tian and Ingo had fought for half an hour. In the end, Jiang Tian forced Ingo to use the kick from the sky, and used a blood-devouring art to kill Ingo. And any one of these 6 Shikigami were several times stronger than Ingo. Their spiritual attacks were even more terrifying. If the 6 Shikigami joined hands, Jiang Tian would only be crushed alive. But who would have thought that Jiang Tian would be able to turn defeat into victory? Of course, Yi Zhantian, De Gushao, and Yi Tianren's doppelganger had also assisted Jiang Tian in this battle. Only Yi Tianren's divine soul avatar had killed the mountain tiger god. The other 5 Shikigamis were all killed by Jiang Tian. Especially when Jiang Tian killed the Sichen god, the soaring serpent god and the evil dragon god. He had killed 1 Shikigamis with 1 slash, and didn't use a second slash. Many East Asian overlords turned pale, as if they had lost their parents. There were only 12 Shikigamis in the vast East Asia. They couldn't accept the fact that half of them had been killed. They stood there as if they had been struck by lightning. They looked at the mess in front of them in disbelief. These Shikigami were their faith, the totems of their people, and also the protectors of Japan. They were extremely powerful, and their divine powers were heaven-defying. Now they had all fallen. This could be said to be the worst loss in hundreds of years. Thank you for your guidance, Senior. Otherwise, I wouldn't have won so easily. Jiang Tian's face was calm as he smiled and cupped his hands in thanks to Yi Tianren's soul avatar. Don't mention it, Brother Jiang. I helped you today because I hope that one day, the old man can have a good fight with Brother Jiang. I have waited 3 years for you. Is that enough? As soon as Heavenly Lord Yi said this, everyone present was shocked. Yi Zhantian's face changed color. He stepped forward and exclaimed, Father, please don't joke with me. I have made up my mind. Kong Teichu, hurry up and absorb the soul energy. The old man will wait for you. Conquer East Asia and return safely. Yi Tianren's voice became hoarse and weak. It was like a music player that had run out of battery. This was a sign that the divine soul avatar was about to be extinguished. Jiang Tian's pupils constricted. Then his aura rose. He bowed and said, It is my honor to spar with Senior Yi. Very good. Very good. 3 years later, on the full moon of the Mid-Autumn Festival, you and I will spar. The white shadow trembled for a moment before the soul avatar finally turned into specks of light, shattered, and disappeared without a trace. Jiang Tian was afraid that the soul energy of these Shikigamis would be completely destroyed. Without thinking, he blew the soul-guiding flute again. Fortunately, the shrine had a nourishing and absorbing effect on soul energy. The soul energy didn't spread out of the shrine. In just a moment, Jiang Tian had absorbed the soul energy. Okay. If I can refine all the soul energy, my divine sense will be 10 times stronger than before. Jiang Tian caressed the god-devouring flute and nodded slightly. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile as a gratified expression appeared on his face. At this time, the soul-guiding bamboo that was made into the soul-guiding flute shone brightly. It became crystal clear like green jade. There was a surge of soul energy flowing in it like a river. Chapter 426. Sigh. Yi Zhantian heaved a long sigh and looked at Jiang Tian with a complicated expression. Brother, you have to believe me. My father has absolutely no prejudice against you. On the contrary, he is very positive and appreciative of you. He is only obsessed with martial arts. Of course. Jiang Tian patted him on the shoulder as a deep expression appeared on his face. He said with unprecedented seriousness, Senior Yi is a straightforward and upright person. He wants to use martial arts to prove his Tao and pursue the truth of the peak of martial arts. I understand. 3 years, that was a long time for Jiang Tian. Based on his cultivation speed, he could reach the foundation establishment stage by now. Once he reached the foundation establishment stage, he would embark on the path to immortality. He would not be afraid even if Yi Tianren was a real immortal. Besides, in Jiang Tian's opinion, Yi Tianren was only at the middle stage of the immortal state. There was still a long way to go before he became a real immortal. Regarding this arranged battle, Jiang Tian was 100% confident that victory was within his grasp. However, Jiang Tian did not have the time to think about that. Kamo Yinwen, come with me. He reached out and grabbed Kamo Yinwen. Then, he turned into a blur and left Nozomiya Shrine to refine the soul energy in the demon-devouring flute. Nozomiya Shrine was destroyed. Sword Sage Ryutaro Momoi and the 6 Shikigami were killed. This news instantly spread throughout the entire Japanese cultivation world like a hurricane and lightning speed. Many Japanese overlords wailed, as if they had lost their parents, and their hearts were filled with pain. But compared to the heartache, there was more fear and uneasiness. How is that possible? That's the Yomiya shrine we're talking about. It's a shrine that has 3 Shikigami overseeing it, the Tengu god, the Skybreak god, and the Ugly Ox god. All of them have hundreds of years of history, and are incomparably powerful. That is the second most powerful shrine in Japan, second only to the Guardian Shrine. How could a mere Wuxia martial artist kill them all and destroy the Hirano Shrine? Some overlords could not believe it. They felt like they were in a dream. We saw it with our own eyes. And it's not just 3 Shikigami, but 6 Shikigami. There was also the 9-tailed flying serpent mountain tiger god, and the evil dragon god from the Protector Shrine. They were all killed by Kong Taechu. In fact, there were many Japanese experts present at the scene. There were many eyewitnesses, and they immediately came out to describe the details. Even the 3 Shikigami of the Protector Shrine are dead? The Guardian Shrine. Many sages and generals were worshipped here, and the spirit-branded retainers were also the strongest. But he was actually killed? Many experts were shocked when they heard this. They couldn't imagine how terrifying Kong Taechu's strength was. The significance of the Protector Shrine is different. It's the spiritual symbol of Japan. Now that the shrine has no gods, it means that Japan has no gods. An old man from the military and political circles who had participated in World War II sighed. Tears streamed down his face as if his parents had died. He was in so much pain that he wanted to die. Not only that, even the sword sage Ryutaro Momoi was killed by him. Another eyewitness revealed a shocking piece of news, which shocked a group of people. Momoi Ryutaro, the president of the Sakura Society and the sect master of the Jingshin Wise sect, was very powerful. He had defeated Wang Chongyan with his sword, and people like Nagaki Miyamoto and Sasaki Kaisha were far inferior to him. They could only be regarded as his disciples and juniors. Moreover, he had been conferred the title of Sword Sage by the Emperor of Japan. His status was extremely high, just like Yi Zhantian in the Huaxiaolong formation. He was qualified to talk to the Emperor of Japan, and even the Prime Minister of Japan had to treat him with respect. But today, he was killed by Kong Taechu with a single slash. In that instant, many people were stupefied, shocked, unable to snap back to reality, waves of cold air rising from the bottom of their hearts. Even the sword sage was no match for him? What is Jiang Taichu's cultivation level? An expert asked with a solemn expression, as if he was facing a great enemy. Lord Momoi used all his strength and used the 10,000 swords in one. But still he couldn't hurt him at all. He killed the sword sage with just a finger. Sasaki Kaisha's cold face was now covered with a layer of frost. Her face was solemn, and she was shocked and angry. Even when she recalled the situation at that time, she still felt a chill in her heart and her hair stood on end. She felt that her strength was far inferior to Kong Taechu's. Even the sword sage was no match for him. And the 6 Shikigami were all dead. Who else can stop Kong Taechu? Many people cried out in grief, feeling defeated and uneasy in their hearts. They were filled with all kinds of torment and anxiety, scratching at their hearts and livers. Japan had suffered heavy losses this time. Half of the 12 Shikigami of the 2 shrines were dead. The president of the Sakura Society, Momoi Sword Sage, was dead, Lord Aoki was killed, and the Grand Divine Priest and Grand Onmyoji Kumo Yunwan was captured. In addition to the overlords who had died before, half of the elites of the Japanese cultivation world were dead or injured. This could be said to be the biggest setback for the Japanese cultivation world in the past 100 years. The losses were too heavy for them to bear. However, they didn't know how to deal with an overlord like Kong Taechu. They were simply at their wits' end. Heavy losses. This is a national disaster. An old soldier who had experienced World War II sighed with a heavy tone. Many old people felt the same way. They felt as if the United States had dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki during World War II. I'm afraid that only the old sword god can suppress Kong Taechu now, Sasaki Kaisha said. For a moment, many overlords kneeling on the tatami looked at Honshu, Tokyo, and the inconspicuous izakaya under Mount Fuji. Yeah, Mr. Miyamoto Shinsen has already gone to invite him. I wonder if he's willing to come out of seclusion? An overlord murmured. The sword god. That was an existence that far surpassed the sword sage. The sword sage would be conferred the title every 10 years. During the heyday of Japanese swordsmanship, there were even 10 sword sages. However, there was only one sword god in history. They couldn't coexist, and sometimes there would be no sword god. He had to be a sword sage conferred by the Prime Minister of Japan and the Emperor of Japan. He had to innovate and expand his swordsmanship, and he had to defeat Japan within 50 years before he would be conferred the title. His position was supreme, and there was only one person in the entire country. In terms of swordsmanship cultivation, Momoi Ryutaro and Miyamoto Genichi were too far apart. It was said that many years ago, Momoi Ryutaro had challenged Miyamoto Genichi under the witness of several swordsmanship masters. However, Miyamoto Genichi had defeated Momoi Ryutaro with just one strike. He swore that he would never accept the title of sword god before Miyamoto Genichi passed away to show his highest respect for Miyamoto Genichi. I'll invite him personally. Sasaki Kaisha stood up with a solemn expression. Yi Tianren's divine soul clone has appeared. This time, it's really a matter of life and death for the Japanese martial arts world. Kong Taechu didn't die. He even destroyed Nomiya Shrine. I didn't expect that bastard to be so powerful. In the study, after Beidasheng received a secret letter from Japan, his face turned ugly, and his thin lips twitched a few times. It seems that this Kong Taechu is a real immortal state cultivator. My dear grandson, are you feeling very pressured? Suddenly, an old voice sounded out of nowhere, and an old figure appeared like a ghost. This old woman was so old that she didn't even look like a human being. Her hair was sparse, and the top of her head was bald, revealing her scalp full of scars. Her cheeks were dry and sunken, and all her teeth had fallen out. She was bent over, leaning on a dragon-headed walking stick, and panting weakly. What was even more frightening was that her face was covered in knife scars. Coupled with her gloomy eyes and cryptic temperament like a venomous snake, she was like an old witch that had crawled out of the yellow springs of the 9 hells. Ancestor, what should I do? You have to help me. A trace of panic flashed across Beidasheng's face. He got up and approached the old woman, pulling her sleeve and asking coquettishly, "Don't be afraid. My great-great-grandson is the best person in the world. No one can stop you. Don't worry, the long formation will be yours. Hongmeng will also be under your control. By then, thousands of sects will have to listen to your orders." The old woman said with a benevolent smile. Her laughter was unpleasant to the ears, like the screeching of an owl, or the scraping of glass on the bottom of a pot. But according to the news, Yi Zhantian is helping him. He even has Yi Tianren's divine soul avatar. Beidasheng frowned and said, "Doesn't this mean that even the Long Formation and Hongmeng are friendly to Kong Taechu? So what if the Long Formation and Hongmeng are? They are just a bunch of old farts from the semi-hidden sects playing house." The old woman cackled and said, "And we have the Divine Lord behind us. Yi Tianren's aura is that of the Kunlun sect, but even if the sect leader of the Kunlun sect met the Divine Lord, he would still be defeated. The Divine Lord is indeed powerful, but he hasn't shown up for a long time." Beidasheng heaved a sigh and said gloomily, "The problem is that my cultivation is not as powerful as Kong Taechu. I am only at the peak of the transcendent state. Even if I become the Divine Lord, no one will be convinced. What are you afraid of?" The old woman smiled and comforted him. "The Gu God sect has found you 2 more cauldrons. If you can absorb them, you will definitely reach the immortal state. It only took you a year to reach the peak of the transcendent state from 0. More cauldrons? 2 at once." Beidasheng had a look of wild elation as he said with a laugh, "This is great. Jiang Taichu definitely isn't my match anymore." The news of Jiang Taichu killing the Japanese sword saint, Momoi Ryutaro, and destroying the Nomiya Shrine quickly spread to Wuxia and caused a huge commotion. In the depths of Wuxia's chaotic internet, a little-known forum was in the middle of a heated discussion. There was the dark net in the dark world, but some Chinese martial artists were registered users of the dark net. The Martial Artists Forum was similar to the dark net. At the same time, the hottest topic was the battle between Kang Taechu and Momoi Ryutaro. One post after another occupied the entire screen. Who said that Kang Taechu had died on the Great Dongya? Show yourself, I promise I won't kill you. Someone posted angrily. A few days ago, someone posted on the forum that Jiang Taichu was the culprit behind the Great Mountain Worship incident on the Diaoyu Islands, which attracted the attention of the entire international community. Jiang Taichu was handed over to Japan to be executed on the spot. For a moment, many martial artists sighed as they couldn't accept the news. Chapter 427. In the past 2 years, Jiang Taichu could be said to be the most ferocious person in Huaxia's martial arts world. He had killed countless experts. Logically speaking, such a domineering attitude would easily make people unhappy and hate him. However, he wasn't a pushover. He had defeated the Chinese Society of Singapore, defeated the Winter Soldiers, massacred the entire Dark World, and brought glory to China. Some people believed Kang Taechu's story, while others were skeptical. Some people believed that Kang Taechu had destroyed a few Japanese battleships, but many didn't believe that Kang Taechu had been executed on the spot. However, the other party had given a lot of details, such as the official statement from the Japanese government, the dragon snaring lasso, and the 5 poison heart-burning tea. Just as everyone was in despair and sorrow, someone with the ID Tsangjiajia posted a post. She said that Kang Taechu hadn't died. He had pretended to be dead because he didn't want the Japanese government to cause trouble for Huaxia. Once he set foot on Huaxia's soil, he came back to life and started a massacre. He had destroyed the Nomiya Shrine, the 6 Shikigami, the Japanese sword sage, and the president of the Sakura Society, Momoi Ryutaro. Momoi Ryutaro, the president of the Sakura Society? The leader of the School of Mirror Mind? Someone was shocked. I heard that he is an immortal state warrior. He has made it to the top 5 of the Dark Roll several times. He is the leader of the Sakura Society and can talk to the Japanese emperor and the prime minister on an equal footing. He is as influential as Yi Zhantian, the leader of the Huaxia Long formation. Some people widened their eyes and sighed with emotion, feeling that this was inconceivable. Huaxia and Japanese martial artists were often at odds with each other, and both sides often studied each other's overlords. The name Momoi Ryutaro was too familiar to them. It could be said that his name reverberated in their ears like thunder. He was known as the #1 sword Dao genius in Japan. His comprehension was amazing and he was extremely talented. When he was only in his 20s, he had defeated Wang Chongyan and was conferred the title of Sword Saint by the Emperor of Japan and the Prime Minister. He was also the youngest sword saint in the history of Japan. Ever since he became the president of the Cherry Blossom Society, he had been very powerful. Be it fighting masters, blood kindred elites, or S-grade ability users, no one had been able to take advantage of him. It could be said that he had never been defeated. He had been ranked in the top 10 of the power rankings many times, and he had even been ranked 3rd once. Under his leadership, the Cherry Blossom Society became a world-class organization of experts. He was also known as the symbol of Japanese kendo and the guardian of Japan. However, such a peerless expert was actually killed by Kang Taechu. This was too shocking. What are spirit-branded retainers? Is it a kind of god? Someone asked in the post. Gods. Where are the gods in this world? Not necessarily. Some of the masters in Huaxia can command ghost soldiers and ghost generals. Isn't that a kind of god? Bah, that's just spiritual power. How can it be a god? Most people didn't know much about the Shikigami. They were very confused and talked about all kinds of things at once. In the end, it was still Tsangjiajia who explained, spirit-branded retainers were popular during the Heian era. There are many reasons for their existence, but the most widely accepted one is that they are the souls of monsters reared by Onmyoges. They usually live in the statues of the gods in shrines, and are worshipped by Japanese citizens. These 6 Shikigami have a history of hundreds or even thousands of years. They have an enormous amount of spiritual power, and are extremely powerful. They are known to have immortal bodies. Legend has it that in Japan's Warring States period, the Onmyoges under Tokugawa Ieyasu once commanded 3 Shikigami to swallow the souls of tens of thousands of elite soldiers of Toyotomi Hideyoshi during the Battle of Odawara. They played a great role in the establishment of the Tokugawa shogunate, the unification of the Japanese islands, and the stability of the Edo period. Shikigami can swallow tens of thousands of souls? So powerful? Someone was stunned and sighed in amazement. If that's the case, they are almost the same as real gods. But Kong Taechu actually killed 6 Shikigami. Isn't that equivalent to killing tens of thousands of people? Kong Taechu is really domineering. Many powerhouses of Wuxia gasped in unison. Their eyes were filled with fanaticism. There was only reverence and respect. Yes, Kong Taechu's actions are really a show of our country's prestige. A veteran martial artist sighed and said, "For a long time, the Japanese powerhouses, especially the members of the Sakura Society, have been unscrupulous in Wuxia. Of course, under the suppression of the Wuxia Long Formation and the Martial Arts Alliance, they can't make any big waves, but it's still disgusting enough. Kong Taechu gave them a head-on blow this time. Let's see if they still dare to step into Wuxia." Yes. Kong Taechu bathed Jinling in blood once, suppressing the entire dark world to regard Wuxia as a forbidden area. He controlled the Wuxia society and became the first generation of Southeast Asia. He killed Xiaobin, and the Russian Winter Army also returned in defeat. This time, he dominated the Japanese, and the result was the same. Someone agreed. The significance this time is extraordinary. Someone above also said that the Long Formation and the Martial Arts Alliance are responsible for guarding the land and killed many invading Japanese powerhouses. Needless to say, our Wuxia martial arts world has always valued peace and has never taken the initiative to attack. Kong Taechu took the initiative to attack this time, showing the sharp edge of our Wuxia martial arts world. This is the first time since the beginning of the world. Someone said excitedly. Below, there was a sudden sound of agreement. Suddenly someone asked, "Sensei-tsang, no sister-tsang, Kong Taechu killed the sword sage of Japan Momoi Rutaru. Does that mean that Kong Taechu is invincible in Japan?" It's hard to say whether he is invincible or not. But Momoi Rutaru is not the real strongest in Japan. Someone called Song Reed said. What? The president of the Sakura Society, the leader of the Mirror Heartwise sect, the sword sage of Japan, is not the strongest in Japan? Is there anyone who is stronger than him? Who is it? Everyone was discussing in disbelief. Sword God, Miyamoto Geniki. Green Reeds typed these words. Sensei-tsang, you are very well informed. Who is Miyamoto Geniki? Yeah, I've never heard of him. No one knew, but Song Reed said, "I have to go to a meeting," and did not reply anymore. It seemed that he had gone offline. Fuck, Miyamoto Geniki is really powerful. He is the former sword sage and has been ranked 3rd on the dark roll 5 times. However, as time passed, more and more information about Miyamoto Geniki was dug out from the dark web. Yeah, Momoi Rutaru once challenged him, but was defeated by him with 1 strike. Besides, Momoi said that as long as the old sword god is alive, he will not accept the title of sword god as a sign of respect. Miyamoto Geniki, born in 1890, is also a genius kendo master. He became the leader of the Niton first-rate sect at the age of 20. During the anti-Japanese war, he came to China from the west and challenged many powerful fighters of the Yellow Flame Iron Brigade. He killed 3 transcendent grandmasters, and was defeated by Yi Tianren in the end. After the defeat of Japan, he returned to China and was appointed as the president of the Sakura Society. He finally reached the half-step immortal state at the age of 60. Since then he has been in seclusion for decades and no one knows how powerful he is now. However, according to the grapevine, he has fought many overlords of the Covenant of Darkness, who are ranked 3rd on the power roll. Kong Taechu might not be able to defeat him. Fuck, he fought with Yi Tianren. What kind of old monster is he? Someone's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. No way. He reached the half-step immortal state at the age of 60. That was a few decades ago. I guess he is definitely at the immortal state now. Someone exclaimed. Immortal state? With the support of the Sakura Society and the old monster who has been in seclusion for decades, he must have reached the immortal state. Phenomenal success. Someone analyzed. Not necessarily. He's already 120 years old. I'm afraid that his chi and blood have already deteriorated, and he won't be able to withstand a single blow. There were also people who had the opposite opinion. He reached the half-step immortal state 60 years ago. If he doesn't reach the immortal state phenomenal success after 60 years of hard work, he would have wasted his time. Immortal state. How can it be achieved so easily? Not to mention the immortal state phenomenal success. Given the arrogance of the East Asians, if he had reached the immortal state phenomenal success, he would have come to Wuxia to show off. For a time there was an endless debate on the forum. Both sides had their own opinions. They quarreled so much that they almost had a fight. It was needless to say that Jiang Taichu was very powerful. He had never been defeated since his debut. However, the old origin of Sword God Palace was already more than 100 years old. He had entered the half-step divine realm 60 years ago. This was not something that Lin Zhenyu and Wang Chongyan could compare with. Even Xiaobin was no match for him. Although Miyamoto Genichi and Xiaobin were both backed by superpowers, the Russian cultivation world was not prosperous. The Winter Soldier organization only had a history of a few decades. However, the Sakura Society had a history of hundreds of years. It had a deep foundation and vast resources. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was as vast as the sea. It could be said that whether it was Lin Zhenyu, Wang Chongyan, or even Xiaobin in terms of talent, battle record, resources, or strength, none of them could compare with Miyamoto Genuine. Now the key is whether Miyamoto Genichi is willing to do it or not. I heard that he has lived in seclusion in the suburbs of Tokyo for many years. Yes, Miyamoto Genichi is an old monster of the same generation as Yi Tianren. He has a noble status. Is he willing to do it? At the thought of this, many Wuxia experts turned their gazes to Japan and the suburbs of Tokyo. Their hearts were filled with unease. In the suburbs of Tokyo, there was a low hut with white walls and black tiles. Under the shade of several cherry trees, one could see Mount Fuji in the distance. It was very elegant. There were several red paper lanterns hanging under the eaves, swaying in the breeze. On them were two plump and round characters in calligraphy. Stove End. The izakaya was very small, but its business was very good. It was full of guests, including stevedores and nearby office workers. At this time, Miyamoto Shinsen had been kneeling on the ground outside the door for 10 hours, but Miyamoto Genichi was still concentrating on cooking and entertaining his guests. Haven't the Japanese materials of the sword god been sold out? Sasaki Kaisha walked slowly and asked a little anxiously. No. Miyamoto Shinsen shook his head helplessly. Since 40 years ago, Miyamoto Genichi had accepted the challenge of Momoi Ritteru. He had lived in seclusion here. And he had lived in seclusion thoroughly, concentrating on making Japanese materials. He had to sell 300 sets of Japanese materials every day. Unless one was a top strong man in the martial arts world, it was absolutely impossible to know that the old man who liked to drink with his guests and talk about everything was actually the old sword god of Dongyang. Momoi Ritteru once sighed after a visit that the sword god had reached the real realm of no self, no name, no achievement. It could be said that he was a real saint, a god, and a person who finally pursued the supreme realm of no self, no name, no achievement. Chapter 428. After waiting until late at night, all the guests left drunkenly. At this time, an old and hoarse voice came out. Come in. Grandfather, the new president of the Sakura Society, Sasaki Kaisha, is here to visit you. Miyamoto Shinzo slowly got up and walked in with Sasaki Kaisha through the rope curtain. Sasaki Kaisha saw an old man carefully wiping the table with a rag, and the charcoal fire in the square open stove was still burning. In the izakaya, the melodious elegant music with Japanese characteristics was still floating. The rhythm was slow, and the notes were clear, as if it was a clear Japanese sake. Would you like a drink? The old man asked with a kind smile. He was old beyond recognition, with wrinkled skin and a crane head. His hair was almost all gone, and his eyes were dim. His body was thin, and his black kimono looked very loose. His left hand was wiping the table, but his right hand was hammering his hunched waist. I dare not trouble swordsman. Sasaki Kaisha bowed and lowered his eyes, secretly a little disappointed. It was said that swordsman was more than 100 years old, and his health was really poor now. With this kind of physique, it was difficult for him to open an izakaya. He should be in a nursing home. Could he kill Kong Taechu? You are the little girl from Sasaki's family? The last time we met seemed to be 20 years ago, right? Miyamoto Genichi wiped the table unhurriedly and said, At that time you were only 12 years old. In the blink of an eye, you are already so old. Time is really terrible. Thanks to swordsman. Seeing that Miyamoto Genichi finally finished wiping the table and threw down the rag, Sasaki Kaisha quickly brought a chair over. Miyamoto Genichi took a few squid balls with bamboo skewers and sat down panting. He poured a glass of soju for himself, ate the squid balls, sipped the soju, and sighed. The happiest period of my life was not when I was running rampant in the martial arts world. At that time, I killed too many people, and my heart never calmed down. Before the challenge, I was very anxious and scared. But after winning, I felt very empty and lost. Life is like a boring pendulum, swinging back and forth between these emotions. He happily sipped a cup of sake and laughed heartily. The happiest time of my life is now, in my later years. Every day, I would make Japanese food and watch the customers finish eating. They would praise the delicious food, and I could even chat with them. I heard that there's a financial crisis outside, right? It's from America, right? He asked curiously, craning his neck. Well, yes. Sasaki Kaisha smiled stiffly. Had he forgotten about kendo? Those office workers are complaining every day. Many people have become herbivores. And you call yourself ping-ching trash. The old man shook his head and smiled, giving people the feeling that he was indifferent to the world. Yeah, the young people in Japan. Sasaki Kaisha didn't know how to continue. As the descendant of the Sasaki family, she controlled more than half of the underground world of Honshu Island. She was like a high and mighty empress, untainted by the common populace. He had always been indifferent to these matters. And the happiest moment of every day is this very moment. Miyamoto Genichi poured the sake into his mouth with an exquisite porcelain cup. He smacked his lips with a kind and satisfied expression and said with a smile, It's fine. Every day after sending the customers away, I feel a little tired but satisfied. I eat my own cuttlefish balls and take a sip of sake. I feel very calm and content. Sasaki Kaisha glanced at the packaging of the sake. Pine Bamboo Plum Blossom writing. She knew that this was produced by Baojiu Company Limited. A bottle was only a few hundred yen. It was the favorite brand of the common people, and was used to accompany their daily meals. Kendo-sama, I have something important to tell you. Sasaki Kaisha bowed slightly and said respectfully. Sasaki Kaisha, don't be shy. There is no old Kendo-sama here, only the chef of the Miyamoto family. Miyamoto Genichi waved his hand and motioned her to sit down. He smiled kindly and said, What is it? Wuxia has a master of both Dharma and martial arts. He is known as the #1 Grandmaster of martial arts, and he may have already entered the immortal state. Sasaki Kaisha didn't sit down and said with difficulty, Oh, entered the immortal state? Is it Yi Zhantian, the leader of the Long Formation? It was obvious that Miyamoto Genichi was very familiar with the martial arts world in Wuxia. No, it is a young man named Kong Taechu. He looks less than 25 years old. He was ranked 3rd in the power ranking. Sasaki Kaisha frowned. Power ranking? The ranking published by the CIA? Haha, their knowledge of martial arts is shallow and sometimes inaccurate. The old man waved his hand, and then his face gradually became serious. He said slowly, However, to be able to enter the immortal state at the age of 25, he is indeed a genius. In the secular world, there has not been one in 100 years. Maybe there are a few in the Yin sect in Wuxia and the Dark Parliament in the West. No, this person is not from the Yin sect, but from the secular world. Sasaki Kaisha said in a low voice. But this person is very powerful. He has killed the #1 master of the Great Circle, Lin Zhenyu, Wang Chongyan of the Singapore Chinese Society, and Xiao Bin of the Russian Winter Soldiers. It is really extraordinary for a secular person to have such combat strength. Miyamoto Genichi was moved and his eyes shone. Sometimes you underestimate the country of Wuxia. The cultivation world of Wuxia is unfathomable and has many strong masters. It is not something you can imagine. Whether it is Yi Tianren or those living fossils in the Yin sect, they are not easy to deal with. He seemed to have returned to the distant past and said earnestly, "When I resigned as the president of the Sakura Society, I reminded Momoi and the others not to provoke Wuxia unless it is necessary." He paused and suddenly asked, "Which secular martial arts family is he from?" "The Jiang family of Jinling." "The Jiang family of Jinling? The family that is said to have the incomplete map of the ruins of immortality?" Miyamoto Genichi was shocked. He frowned and muttered to himself. Has he been to the ruins of immortality before, or is he from that world? The incomplete map of the ruins of immortality? What is that? Sasaki Kaisha asked curiously. You don't need to know. Miyamoto Genichi came back to his senses and smiled. He waved his hand and said, "Go on." A month ago, in South Korea, he killed Abe Akira, Miyamoto Takeo, Yagyu Masayuki, and many other masters of the Nozomiya Shrine who were stationed in the Sandalwood Palace. Sasaki Kaisha said bitterly. Then he killed Hattori Hanzo and your nephew Nagaki Miyamoto on the Great East Asia. Then he set foot in Japan yesterday and killed High Priest Abe on the Fukuoka Pier. Today, he killed Sword Sage Momoi Ryutaro, Kamo Yunwan and 6 Shikigamis. Nozomiya Shrine has been destroyed. Kamo Yunwan has been captured alive. What? Miyamoto Genichi's expression changed drastically. Boom. He stood up and a violent aura spread in all directions. The stone tiles under his feet were instantly shattered. Boom. The dining table, tables, and chairs around him were all turned into powder. Even the iron square stove was shattered in an instant. As soon as he stood up, it was as if a towering and steep mountain had risen. His aura was oppressive and made people feel as if they were looking at a towering mountain. With his feet as the center, cracks a few centimeters wide suddenly appeared on the ground. They spread out like a spider web and directly meandered to the asphalt road dozens of meters away. It was a shocking sight. Under Miyamoto Genichi's monstrous aura, Sasaki Kaisha's sternum creaked. She felt that it was difficult to breathe, as if her chest would collapse in the next moment. Sword God, please calm down. She knelt on the ground and looked at Miyamoto Genichi in horror. The old sword god's power was terrifying. As for Miyamoto Shinsan, he was directly suppressed by this aura and fell to the ground with a plop. He almost fainted. Nozomiya Shrine is one of the largest shrines in Japan. Kamo Yunwan is the high priest of the national shrine, which symbolizes the spirit of the Yamato people. Nozomiya Shrine has been destroyed and 6 Shikigamis of the 2 shrines have fallen. This is a great humiliation to Japan. Miyamoto Genichi's face was filled with anger. His originally turbid eyes suddenly became incomparably clear, and sharp light burst out like lightning. His originally stooped waist became as straight as a sword, and an enormous fighting spirit rose steadily from his body. He exuded a majestic aura and said with a surging battle intent, "It has always been us from Japan invading Wuxia. When did Wuxia's martial artists dare to invade Japan? They even killed my powerhouses and destroyed my shrines. This is intolerable. Sword God, our Japanese martial arts world has indeed reached a point of life and death. Please take action and suppress this monster." Sasaki Kaisha was excited. The old sword god's strength was too strong. Even 10 Momoi Ryutaru would not be a match for him. Ha ha. Maybe if Zeus and Yi Tianren came personally, I would have to avoid them. But other than these few people, what do I have to fear? Hearing this, Miyamoto Genichi looked up to the sky and laughed. The sound waves rolled out like rolling thunder, causing a sharp pain in people's eardrums. Bombarded by the sound waves, a few cars parked on the side of the road were blasted into the air, and moved a few meters away before crashing to the ground. The windows were shattered and the sirens wailed like ghosts and wolves, spreading far and wide in the dark night. Sasaki Haisha suddenly saw a tall figure suddenly appear out of thin air in front of Miyamoto-ken. He was wearing a white kendo suit. His black hair fell to his shoulders. His eyebrows were sharp like swords and his eyes were bright like stars. He was 2 meters tall and as handsome as a god. At first, he was vague, but in the end he completely solidified and looked like a real person. He looked somewhat similar to Miyamoto Genichi. This is... Sasaki Kaisha suddenly thought of a legend in the martial arts world. His body suddenly trembled and he was terrified. Immortal state cultivators mainly cultivate soul energy. The symbol of a true immortal state cultivator is the incarnation of God. Miyamoto Genichi smiled smugly and said, "No matter how magnificent Kong Teichu is, no matter how powerful you are nothing to Miyamoto Genichi." He raised his white eyebrows and shouted, "The sword of immortal transformation. It can slay the world." Before his voice died away, the incarnation of his divine soul suddenly turned into a dozens of feet-long blade aura and slashed out. Chapter 429. Even though Sasaki Aisha and Miyamoto Shinzo were far away from each other, they still felt suffocated. The dazzling blade aura was like the Milky Way. A crack more than half a meter wide passed through the highway, the supermarket, the residential area, and spread directly to a hill 100 meters away. Boom! A crack appeared on the hill more than 200 meters high, allowing one person to pass through. The man and the sword became one, splitting the earth, splitting the mountain with one sword. Seeing this, Sasaki Aisha and Miyamoto Shinzo were stunned. They were full of reverence and shock as if they had seen a true god. Even when Momoi Rutaru was at his peak state, he could only split a river. Not even 10,000 swords in one was as powerful as this. But Genichi Miyamoto could split the earth and split the mountain with one sword. How much more powerful was he than Momoi Rutaru? Is this the real immortal state? He is like a god. Miyamoto Shinzo murmured to himself in shock. Looking at the old figure, Sasaki Kaisha bowed his head respectfully and said to himself in his heart, "You're right. I didn't expect Sword God Miyamoto to have reached such a level. No matter how powerful Kong Teichu is, I'm afraid he can only give up his sword and admit defeat." 3 days later, Genichi Miyamoto of Dongyang Sword God Palace fought with Kong Teichu on the top of Mount Fuji. When the news spread, East Asia was shocked. This battle was too eye-catching. It could be said that in recent times, there had been many wars between Wuxia and Japan. It could be said to be a blood feud. Similarly, as the elites of the two countries, there were also many conflicts and killings between them, resulting in many bloody incidents. The cultivators of the two countries looked down on each other. The Dongyang people thought that Wuxia was the sick man of East Asia and was an inferior race. They were vulnerable compared to Dongyang martial arts. On the other hand, Wuxia cultivators thought that Dongyang Kendo came from Wuxia's ancient swordsmanship mixed with Confucianism and Zen Buddhism. Karate came from Wuxia's Sanzho of the Tang dynasty. Inyang Jutsu was plagiarized from Wuxia's Dharma spells. Ninjutsu was just the kung fu of Wuxia. Everything in their cultivation world was not authentic. Because of this battle was immediately covered with ethnic colors. It became a battle between Wuxia and Japan to see who was more orthodox and who was more powerful. This is the most powerful battle between Wuxia and Dongyang martial arts in 100 years. An overlord exclaimed. In the 30s of the last century, Genichi Miyamoto and Yi Tianren had a showdown in Qinchuan. But at that time, both of them were very young and Genichi Miyamoto hadn't really entered the immortal state. At that time, Yi Tianren didn't dare to be called the most powerful overlord in Wuxia. At the moment, Kong Teichu was the top grandmaster on the divine roll in Wuxia, and was recognized as an immortal state master. He was the most powerful overlord in Wuxia, and Genichi Miyamoto had reached the top of Dongyang in decades. He was the old sword god of Dongyang, the former sword saint and the master of many kendo sections. He was known as the most powerful overlord in Dongyang. Even Momoi Rutaru had been taught by him. He was the last trump card of Dongyang. Therefore, this could be said to be a shocking battle between the most powerful overlords of the two countries in a century. When the news spread to Wuxia, the entire martial arts and cultivation world was shocked. Many people were paying close attention to the development of the situation and discussing it enthusiastically. Genichi Miyamoto of the Sword God Palace. This old guy is really going to fight. Will Kong Taechu win this time? This question was pinned at the top of the martial arts forum. The replies below were refreshed one after another. In just a few hours, there were tens of thousands of replies. The forum's master even launched an anonymous poll, and thousands of martial artists voted. Place your bets. Place your bets. Kong Taechu and Genichi Miyamoto are going to fight. Whoever loses and who wins, place your bets. There were also administrators who opened a betting pool on the forum, and many people joined in. Those who could enter this forum were all martial artists of a certain level in Wuxia, and there was no lack of giants among them. As the saying went, the poor studied while the rich practiced martial arts. As long as they were martial artists, they didn't lack money at all. Hundreds of millions of funds were instantly transferred into the pool of the betting pool. Only a few young people gathered on the martial arts forum. The real senior members of Wuxia's martial arts world were worried, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Kong Taechu is taking too much of a risk this time. If it weren't for Warsky bringing Senior Yi Tianren's soul avatar, he would have died in Nomiya Shrine this time. In the long formation secret base, Chao Shixiang sat in the middle and said worriedly with a frown. Tang Hongtu and several senior military officials with general stars on their shoulders sat down. The 4 spiritual generals of the long formation and many other martial arts masters gathered together. It could be said that Kong Taechu's battle was too touching. Even the chief had called many times to ask about it and report any situation at any time. The long formation special department had to pay attention to it. It's not Kong Taechu's fault. Black Tortoise shrugged and said in a muffled voice, "Didn't he just blow up a few Japanese warships? Some people are too spineless. They sent Kong Taechu out just like that. If Kong Taechu didn't bite the bullet and fight, would he wait to be killed by the Japanese?" This matter is very complicated. It's mainly because Tang Linglong of Battle Dragon stirred up trouble and was pinched by the Condor unit. Her identity is very special and sensitive. That's why Jiang Taichu had no choice but to suffer for someone else. Tang Hongtu's face flashed with a complicated look as he said helplessly. Chao Shixiang interrupted the discussion and asked with a frown, "Okay, cut the crap. What's the cultivation level of this Genichi Miyamoto? How's the relevant intelligence analysis?" An officer in charge of the intelligence system stood up and took out a stack of information reports. "We once intercepted and cracked a secret CIA email. The email said that a Class X Arcanist from America's Blue Storm had challenged Genichi Miyamoto 10 years ago. Class X Arcanist? That's the highest level of Arcanists, equivalent to immortal state?" Someone exclaimed. Everyone was shocked. Level X Arcanists were also called Unknown Arcanists. Their strength was unpredictable, and they often had the power to destroy the world. In Blue Storm, there were only a few of them. Then what was the result of the battle? Black Tortoise poked his head and asked excitedly. This Class X Arcanist was defeated by the opponent in 3 moves and fled back to America. He died not long after. The officer gulped and said with difficulty, before he died, this Class X Arcanist gave an evaluation that Genichi Miyamoto had completely surpassed Class X Arcanists in terms of spirit, physical body, sword aura, and so on. He had strength far beyond the early stage of immortal state. American Class S and above must not get close to Genichi Miyamoto if they are not equipped with the latest weapons such as armor-piercing kinetic skeletons and electromagnetic cannons. Arcanists below Class S are not allowed to challenge Genichi Miyamoto under any conditions. As soon as these words came out, there was a dead silence. Everyone's expression changed drastically. Their hearts were filled with uneasiness. Genichi Miyamoto is definitely at immortal state. The question is whether he is at initial stage, phenomenal stage, perfect stage, or peak stage. After a long while, Black Tortoise broke the silence and said with a frown, "What about Kong Taechu? How strong is he?" Red Sparrow asked. "Should be at initial stage of immortal state? He might even be half a step away from immortal state." Someone sighed helplessly. "Ling Long, you are too stubborn. If Kang Taechu falls in Japan in this battle, then the Tang family will be sinners in history. Tang Hongta shook his head and sighed as if he had aged 10 years in an instant. Chao Shixiang's heart was heavy at this moment. When Kang Taechu swept through Nomiya Shrine, he was relieved that Beta Sheng's wishful thinking was wrong. But now, with the old sword god taking action, he felt that Beta Sheng had succeeded in tricking Kang Taechu. Sir, should we ask Hong Meng for help? Red Sparrow hesitated for a long time before asking tentatively. If Hong Meng is willing to help, then the one in Nomiya Shrine would not be Yi Tianren's divine soul avatar, but Yi Tianren himself. Don't you understand their attitude? Chao Shixiang sighed helplessly. There were some things that could not be revealed to the members of the Long Formation. It was said that these old monsters of Hong Meng were suppressing some ancient demons in a mysterious place. They had exhausted their energy and lifespan, so they could not spare any time to attend to the affairs of the mortal world. Huaxia's biggest trump card was Yi Zhantian, but he was already fighting side by side with Kang Taechu. Then what should we do? Black Tortoise said nervously. Genichi Miyamoto seems to be hiding his strength. Kang Taechu has no idea what is going on. Moreover, he is going in alone this time. And there is also the threat of the Japanese self-defense forces. If there is no other way, let him withdraw? Will Kang Taechu withdraw? Don't you know Kang Taechu's personality? He is a dragon in the river. If he does not turn the other side upside down, he will lose everything. He will not come back until he can't fight anymore. Chao Shixiang scolded angrily. He shook his head and sighed. Kang Taechu is in an unprecedented danger in this battle. Suddenly, Chao Jianjia's expression changed. She stood up abruptly and rushed out of the office. Chao Shixiang stood up and shouted behind her. Damn girl, where are you going? We are in a meeting. I am going to inform Kang Taechu. I can't let him be attacked alone. Chao Jianjia said without looking back. This damn girl. She was still holding a grudge against Kang Taechu at the Martial Arts Alliance conference. I didn't expect her to be conquered by Kang Taechu so quickly. Seeing this, Chao Shixiang could only smile bitterly. At the same time, Huaxia's martial arts world Zhang family, the Huqingtian family of the Central Plains, the Shennong School, the Zhao Yuankuan family of Gan Province, the Yi Wudao family of Zhejiang Province, the Wu Yingxiong family of Southwest Province, the Shadowblight sect, the Ghost Witch cult, and many other sects and families were in a heated discussion. This battle could be said to be the most powerful battle between Huaxia and Japan in the past 100 years. It was also the most eye-catching battle. The attention far exceeded that of Kang Taechu's battle with Lin Zhenyu and Xiaobin. Because of the old grudges between Huaxia and Japan, the battle between the two peak experts had risen to the height of national honor. All of a sudden, many martial arts overlords embarked on their journeys to Japan. They wanted to witness the greatest battle of the century between China and Japan. Chapter 430. Jinling Mount Fulong. A sharp cold light flashed. Blood splattered, and a corpse flew out. Hua Qingtian cast a fireball talisman that Jiang Tian had given him to burn the corpse into ashes. He walked into the mansion with a bloody sword and bowed. Mistress, I'm afraid this is the last wave today. Yes, the news that my husband is in Japan has spread to the dark world. I'm afraid no one will dare to attack us in the future. Zhao Xueqing withdrew her divine sense and stroked the head of Equaling Heaven, who was scratching his ears and cheeks. She glanced at the Heavenly Alliance members present and nodded with a smile. Everyone, thank you for your hard work. Thank you. It's our honor to work for Master Kong. Hua Qingtian, Zhao Yuankuan, Wei Feilong, Hong Yi, and the other Heavenly Alliance members bowed and said with enthusiasm. Since the news of Kang Taechu's death had spread, there had been 12 waves of more than 70 Dark World powerhouses attacking the Jinling Jiang family. Some of them wanted to destroy the Jiang family's properties. However, under Zhao Xueqing's leadership, many Heavenly Alliance members killed them one after another, as if they were chopping melons and vegetables. It could be said that they were delighted and elated. The last time the Dark Flower offered a reward, it happened to coincide with intercepting Xiaobin. Many Heavenly Alliance members were distracted. They did not participate in the bloodbath in Jinling, and even suffered losses at Xiaobin's hands. They had become the biggest laughing stock. Jiang Tian had taught them spells and martial arts. They were indebted to him. They were really unhappy and apologetic to Jiang Tian. Now they had fought bravely against their enemies and defeated the experts from the Blood Totem, the Butterfly Skeleton, the Tombstone, the Heavenly Eye, and other organizations. They had truly displayed the Heavenly Alliance's strength and made a name for themselves. Only now did they feel relieved. "Mistress, shall we go to Japan to cheer for Master Kong?" Hong Yi smiled. "I heard that many of our fellow disciples in the martial arts and cultivation world are going." "Yes, let's go. Charter a flight and depart." Zhao Xueqing knew that the news that Kong Taichu was still alive was enough to frighten those rascals, so she was very relieved. Besides, one day apart from Jiang Tian felt like 3 years had passed. She couldn't bear the torment of missing him. "Great. We can finally witness Master Kong slay Gong Yuanyi." Many Heavenly Alliance experts rubbed their palms in excitement. When she went out, Zhao Xueqing saw Huang Linger sitting cross-legged in the medicinal field under the bright light, cultivating arduously. In front of him, a few stalks of wind chime grass swayed in the wind, their medicinal fragrance assailing his nostrils. As she activated her cultivation method, streaks of green Yi-wood qi gathered from all directions and flowed into the roots of the windchime grass through her consciousness. With the influx of the Yi-wood qi, the windchime grass seemed to have become even more verdant and full of vitality. She walked over with a smile and said, "Linger, aren't you bored meditating all day? Do you want to take a trip to Japan?" "Sister Qinger, I'm not going. I'm not bored either. I have to guard Professor Zhang's medicinal herbs. Look, a few more have matured. They're growing so well. Thank you for your hard work." Qinger felt a tinge of pity in her heart. She touched her hair lovingly and said with a smile, "Then you continue to have fun. Be careful. The trip to Japan might be a bloodbath. It would be safer to leave her here with Ghost Kick, Shen Mange, and the others to protect her." "Okay, Sister Qinger, I will." Huang Linger smiled sweetly and immersed herself in cultivation again. Looking at her pretty back, a thought flashed through Zhao Xueqing's mind. What a cute girl. Hubby should restore her memory. Just as Zhao Xueqing, Wuxia, and many other experts of the cultivation world were rushing to Japan, Jiang Tian had already returned to Ishi Yulian's villa and was about to refine the spirit power in the soul-guiding flute. The soul-guiding bamboo is really extraordinary. It actually absorbed and refined all the spirit power of the 6 Shikigami. Jiang Tian opened his eyes, and a look of joy appeared on his face. The soul-guiding bamboo was an excellent material for controlling spirit. It was very rare in the cultivation world. Not only could the soul-guiding flute absorb spirit power, but it had also become a magic treasure after Jiang Tian's refinement. And it was at least a middle-grade magic treasure that could refine and purify this spirit power. In this way, it was much more convenient for Jiang Tian to refine and absorb this relatively pure spirit power. Therefore, it only took more than 10 hours for Jiang Tian to turn all this spirit power into his own divine sense. At this time, the divine sense in the small lake on his forehead was at least 10 times vaster than before and more condensed. Let's give it a try. With a thought, Jiang Tian's divine sense in the small golden lake on his forehead rippled. Boom. With a sound, a golden divine general more than 3 meters tall jumped out. This divine general's body was shining with a bright golden light. He had slanted eyebrows, red phoenix eyes, and 3 strands of black beard hanging down to his chest. He was wearing a golden armor and holding a green dragon crescent blade. He was 3 meters tall. If the villa was not high enough, a hole would have been made in the villa. This general greets the master. The divine general's body emitted an ear-piercing sound of metal friction. He knelt on one knee and saluted Jiang Tian with cupped fists. If you also had a red face, then you would be a living Guan Yu. How about I call you Little Guan Guan from now on? Jiang Tian laughed and was very gratified. Before absorbing the spirit power of the 6 Shikigami, even if Jiang Tian condensed all his divine sense, he could only condense an inch-long sword. But now, this divine general was completely condensed from his spirit power. Whether it was the volume or the purity, it was not comparable to the divine sense sword. In this way, it only consumed 1/5 of his divine sense. When he released the divine general, he could still control the flying sword. Moreover, this divine general could change according to his will, and had spirituality. It was similar to his external incarnation. It could attack and defend on its own. There was no need to consume his divine sense to command and drive it. It was much better than the flying sword. The most wonderful thing was that if Jiang Tian did not want to use this divine general, he could turn it into an ordinary divine sense to enhance his perception and control of the instrument. It was not a waste at all. Now his divine sense could spread across a radius of 50 kilometers. If it was condensed into a straight line, it could even reach further. Therefore, it was not an exaggeration to say that his flying sword could take a person's head from 100 kilometers away. In the living room, Dugu Xiao was happily playing Fight the Landlord with the mayor of Shizuoka Prefecture, and Kumo Yunwen. As for the vice president of the Mitsui clan, he did not have the opportunity to play cards. He could only serve tea and cigarettes on the side. Yes, he was tired of watching TV recently. The Chinese channel of Ishii Yurin's family was a little small. There were only a few programs. After learning the Fight the Landlord from Jiang Tian, which was good for the physical and mental health, he immediately played it day and night. Bakiaro, do you know how to play cards? Am I the landlord, or is he the landlord? Don't let him run away. Dugu Xiao shouted at Kumo Yunwen and kicked him fiercely. This great priest who could talk to the emperor was bullied to the point of tears. Brother Xiao, I have played for 12 hours. I am very sleepy. Kumo Yunwen wanted to cry, but had no tears to shed. If you play cards wrong again, I will chop you up. Dugu Xiao now knew a few words of Japanese, especially cursing and threatening. Where is Kong Teichu? Come out. At this time, Sasaki Kaisha walked in quickly under the escort of several extraordinary middle-aged men. She was dressed in a white kendo suit, and held the famous sword Cold Moon in her hand. She had a beautiful face and a cold expression. Her temperament was otherworldly, but she was also full of vigor. She was like a kendo girl who had walked out of a manga. Who do you think you are? If you want to see my virgin brother, then go and see him. Get lost. Dugu Xiao threw the poker cards on the table and said arrogantly, You are my grandfather. I am your grandson. I beg Grandpa Wuxia to spare my life. Sasaki Kaisha shouted in Mandarin. She was led into a ditch by Ishii Yurin. She always thought that this was a threat. This attitude is good. Sister Ishii, please receive them. Dugu Xiao chuckled. Beside her, Ishii Yurin smiled and said, Miss Sasaki, Mr. Jiang is cultivating in seclusion. What is it that you are here for? I can convey your message. Sasaki Kaisha took out a solemn and simple invitation and said coldly, Old Kendo Miyamoto Geniki wants to fight with Master Kong. Hearing this, Ishii Yurin's body suddenly stiffened. Her face suddenly changed and became white as paper. My God! Even Kendo swordsman wants to fight? Kumo Yunwen Mitsui Sho, and the mayor of Fukuoka Prefecture were ecstatic. If they were not afraid of Jiang Tian, they would have jumped up and cheered. Miyamoto Geniki? The one who killed 3 transcendent grandmasters in Yen and in 1939? Dugu Xiao's face suddenly turned cold. He said, Did he kill Dugu Cho? Yes, so what? Sasaki Kaisha said disdainfully. Very well. This old dog is still alive. This is great. This time, I am going to cut off his head. Dugu Xiao's eyes flashed as he said with hatred. Dugu Cho was his grandfather who died at the hands of Miyamoto Geniki. After the founding of the country, a few members of the Dugu family died at the hands of the Miyamoto family. Therefore, Dugu Xiao and Miyamoto Geniki were mortal enemies. How dare you? Who do you think you are? How dare you insult the old kendo swordsman? Sasaki Kaisha said angrily. Whoosh! She pulled out the blade of Cold Moon and pointed it at Dugu Xiao. She looked like she was going to start a fight with Dugu Xiao. Kneel down and beg for forgiveness, or I will kill you. Sasaki Kaisha's cold face was filled with murderous intent. She was afraid of Kong Teichu. After all, he was the one who had defeated the Sword Saint of Japan and the 6 Shikigamis. However, she was not afraid of Dugu Xiao. Her strength was on par with Momoi Rutaru, and she could even suppress Greenwood King. Bitch! How dare you use your weapon in my territory? Do you want to die? Suddenly, the voice of a divine sense exploded in Sasaki Haisha's mind like a sudden clap of thunder. Thump! Thump! Sasaki Kaisha staggered a dozen steps backward. Her face turned pale as blood spurted out from her 7 orifices. She almost fell to the ground and couldn't even hold the blade of Cold Moon firmly. It could be said that Jiang Tian had only used 1/10 of his divine sense, and it had caused her spiritual energy to suffer great damage. In Japan, ninjutsu, inyan jutsu, and kendo were all developed, but kendo was still the most powerful. Kendo was the cultivation of the body, soul energy, and sword chi. As one of the top 5 kendo grandmasters in Japan, Sasaki Kaisha's soul energy was very strong and powerful, but she couldn't even withstand 1/10 of Jiang Tian's divine will. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.